Her grandmother's last words were a warning disguised as comfort. "Child, your heart is too soft for this hard world." Elena Mullins proved her right the night she knelt beside a creature that could kill her with one snap of its jaws. The wolf was dying. The forest was forbidden, and every instinct screamed at her to run. But Elena had never been good at self-preservation. She chose compassion over common sense, mercy over survival. What she didn't know was that the dying wolf had golden eyes that saw straight through her soul, that he was more than animal, that her single act of kindness would start a war between two worlds and make her the only one who could stop it. Chapter 1. The Girl Who Saw Worth in Worthless Things. The rain fell like needles against Elena Mullins's skin as she stumbled through the forest, her worn boots squelching in mud that seemed determined to pull her down into the earth itself. She shouldn't be out here. Everyone in Millbrook knew that. The woods beyond the town limits were forbidden territory not by law, but by something far more powerful, fear. But Elena had never been good at following rules written by fear. Her canvas bag, patched and repatched until it was more thread than fabric, hung heavy against her hip. Inside were herbs from old Mrs. Calderon's garden payment for fixing the woman's leaking roof last week. Elena didn't know much about roofing, but she knew enough. She knew enough about most things to get by, to survive, to make herself useful in a town that had decided long ago that she would never quite belong. The orphan girl, they called her. The strange one. That Mullins child with the odd eyes. Elena's eyes were heterochromatic, one green as spring moss, one brown as autumn earth. Her grandmother used to say they were a gift, that they let her see the world as it truly was, in all its seasons at once. But grandmother had been dead for 3 years now, and without her protection, without her fierce love, Elena had learned that gifts could easily become curses depending on who was looking. She was 19 now, living alone in the cottage, at the edge of town that everyone else avoided, too close to the woods, they said, too close to whatever lived in those shadows. The thunder cracked overhead, and Elena pulled her thin jacket tighter. She should turn back. The storm was getting worse, and night was falling fast. But something kept pulling her forward, deeper into the trees, like an invisible thread wrapped around her ribs and tugging. Then she heard it. A sound that made her blood freeze and her heart crack open simultaneously. A whimper, low and broken. The sound of something dying alone. Elena's feet moved before her mind could catch up. She followed the sound through curtains of rain, through brambles that tore at her clothes and skin, until she stumbled into a small clearing and saw it. The wolf. It lay on its side in the mud, its dark fur matted with blood and rain. Even dying, it was massive, easily the size of a small horse, far larger than any wolf Elena had ever seen in the picture books at the library. Its eyes were closed, its breathing shallow and ragged. Deep gashes ran along its side and legs, wounds that looked like they'd been made by claws or other teeth. Elena should run. Every survival instinct screamed at her to turn and flee. Wolves were dangerous, wolves were predators, and this one, even wounded, could easily kill her. But those instincts had never been as loud as the other voice in her head, the one that sounded like grandmother, the one that asked a different question entirely. Who else will help if you don't? Elena dropped to her knees in the mud beside the dying wolf. "Hey," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the rain. "Hey, I'm here. You're not alone." The wolf's eye cracked open, just one eye, golden and impossibly intelligent. It looked at her with something that seemed almost like recognition, almost like relief. Then it closed again, and the whimpering stopped. Elena's hands moved with practiced efficiency. She'd learned basic wound care from grandmother, who'd been the town's unofficial healer before arthritis had stolen her nimble fingers. Elena had inherited those fingers, along with the knowledge pressed into them. She pulled supplies from her bag, clean cloth, the jar of salve Mrs. Calderon had given her for the herbs, her water bottle. It wasn't much. It wouldn't be enough for wounds this severe, but it was what she had, and that would have to matter. "This is going to hurt," she told the wolf, though it probably couldn't hear her. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." She began cleaning the wounds, working as gently as she could. The wolf didn't move, didn't react. For several terrifying moments, Elena thought it might already be dead. Then she felt the faint flutter of breath against her wrist, and relief flooded through her. The rain pounded down. Lightning illuminated the clearing in stark white flashes. And Elena worked, her fingers moving over fur and torn flesh, applying pressure to wounds that wouldn't stop bleeding, whispering words that were half prayer and half promise. "You're going to be okay. You're going to survive this. I won't let you die alone out here. I won't." Hours passed. Or maybe it was minutes. Time felt strange and elastic in the storm, in the darkness. With death hovering so close, Elena could almost see its shadow circling. Finally, the worst of the bleeding stopped. Elena had used every cloth in her bag, every drop of salve, every technique grandmother had ever taught her. Her hands were stained red and shaking with exhaustion, but the wolf was still breathing. She couldn't move it. The creature was far too heavy, and dragging it would only reopen the wounds. So Elena did the only thing she could think of. She gathered armfuls of dryish leaves and branches from beneath a nearby overhang, and piled them around the wolf, creating a makeshift shelter. Then she took off her jacket, already soaked through anyway, and draped it over the wolf's torso. "I'll come back," she promised, stroking the damp fur between the wolf's ears. "First light. I'll bring more supplies. You just have to hold on until then. Please." The wolf's eye opened again, that single golden eye that seemed to look straight through her skin and into her soul. Something passed between them in that moment, something Elena didn't have words for. Understanding, maybe, or gratitude, or a promise being made in a language older than words. Then she forced herself to stand, forced herself to turn away, forced herself to stumble back through the storm toward home. Elena didn't sleep that night. She paced her small cottage, changing into dry clothes only because hypothermia wouldn't help the wolf. She gathered more supplies, bandages torn from her spare blanket, the emergency antibiotic ointment she'd been saving, water bottles, even some of the dried meat from her meager food stores. When the first gray light of dawn filtered through her window, she was already out the door. The forest was eerily quiet after the storm. Mist clung to the ground like ghostly fingers, and every snapped twig under Elena's boots sounded impossibly loud. She half expected to find the wolf dead. No creature could survive wounds like that. It was impossible, but when she pushed through the brambles into the clearing, her heart lurched with wild, impossible hope. The wolf was sitting up, still clearly weak, still wounded, but alive and conscious, and watching her approach with those intelligent golden eyes, both of them open now, tracking her every movement. "Oh, thank God," Elena breathed, dropping to her knees in the damp earth. "I thought I was so afraid." She started to reach out, then hesitated. The wolf was awake now, aware. It could easily snap her arm off if it wanted to, but it didn't. Instead, it leaned forward and pressed its massive head against her hand. A gesture so clearly intentional, so clearly asking for touch, that Elena felt tears prick her eyes. "Okay," she whispered, stroking the soft fur. "Okay. Let me check your wounds." The wolf stayed perfectly still as she worked, changing the makeshift bandages, applying fresh ointment, checking for signs of infection. The wounds looked better than they had any right to, already starting to close, edges pink and healthy, impossible healing for such severe injuries. Elena tried not to think about what that might mean. "You need food," she said, pulling out the dried meat. "And water. Can you eat?" The wolf sniffed the meat, then gently took it from her palm with such care that it barely grazed her skin. It ate slowly, watching her the entire time, and Elena found herself talking, telling it about her grandmother, about the town, about the loneliness of her cottage and the way people crossed the street to avoid her mismatched eyes. She'd never told anyone these things before, but somehow, it felt safe to tell them to a creature that couldn't judge, couldn't reject, couldn't confirm all her worst fears about herself. When the meat was gone, the wolf made a soft sound, not quite a whine, not quite a growl, almost like it was trying to communicate something. "I have to go back," Elena said reluctantly. "People will notice if I'm gone too long, but I'll come back tonight, I promise." She stood, brushing mud from her knees, and turned to leave. That's when she heard the crack of a branch behind her. Elena spun around to see 3 men emerging from the trees, rifles in their hands and cruel smiles on their faces. She recognized them immediately, Brad Ritter and his cousins, the town bullies who'd made her life miserable since childhood. Well, Brad drawled, his eyes glinting with malicious glee. "Looks like we found the beast that's been terrorizing the livestock. And look who's protecting it. The weird little orphan girl." Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. She stepped in front of the wolf, spreading her arms wide even though she knew how pathetic the gesture was. "He's hurt. He's not terrorizing anything. Please, just leave him alone." Brad laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "That thing is a menace. And you're a fool for getting between it and what it deserves." He raised his rifle, and Elena Mullins, who had never been brave, who had spent her whole life trying to be small and invisible and not worth the trouble of cruelty, didn't move. "No," she said. "Just that. Just no." The word hung in the air like a challenge, like a line drawn in the earth, like the moment before everything changes forever. Behind her, the wolf growled a sound that seemed to vibrate through the ground itself, through Elena's bones, through the very air. It wasn't the growl of a dying animal. It was the growl of something ancient and powerful and furious. Brad's smile faltered, and in the distance, something answered the wolf's call. A howl. Then another. Then 10 more, rising like a song made of moonlight and murder. Brad's face went white. What the hell? The forest erupted with movement. Wolves poured into the clearing from every direction, dozens of them, all massive, all moving with predatory grace, all focused on the 3 men with rifles. Elena's wolf struggled to its feet, still weak but standing, and the other wolves immediately fell into formation around it, protecting it, deferring to it. And Elena understood, with sudden crystalline clarity, exactly what she'd saved. Not just a wolf. A king. Brad and his cousins ran, their rifles forgotten in their panic, their screams echoing through the trees. The wolves didn't pursue. They simply watched them go, then turned as one to look at Elena still standing there, frozen in shock, her mind trying to process what was happening. The injured wolf stepped toward her. Even wounded, even exhausted, it moved with undeniable authority. It looked at her with those golden eyes, and Elena saw something in them that made her breath catch. Gratitude, recognition, and something else, something that felt like a door opening, like a choice being offered, like everything she'd ever known was about to shatter and reshape into something entirely new. The wolf bowed its head to her, and every other wolf in the clearing did the same. Chapter 2. The debt that cannot be refused. Elena's legs gave out. She didn't make the decision to sit, her body simply folded, depositing her unceremoniously on the damp forest floor, while her mind spun in useless circles, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. Dozens of wolves, all bowing to her. No, not to her, because of her, because she'd saved their what? Leader? King? The word felt ridiculous even thinking it, but what else could explain the perfect synchronization, the obvious deference, the way every single predator in this clearing was waiting for the injured wolf's command? The large wolf, her wolf, some possessive part of her brain insisted on calling it, lifted its head and made a sound, not quite a bark, not quite a howl, something between, a command. The other wolves melted back into the forest, as silently as they'd appeared, until only 5 remained. These 5 were different from the others. Elena noticed, with the part of her mind still capable of observation. Larger, more scarred. They carried themselves with the confidence of warriors, of guardians, of something other than simple beasts. One of them, a silver-furred female with eyes like winter ice, approached slowly. She sniffed Elena carefully, thoroughly, then made a soft chuffing sound that seemed almost approving. "I don't understand," Elena whispered, her voice cracking. "I don't understand what's happening." The injured wolf moved closer, each step obviously painful despite the impossible healing. It pressed its head against her shoulder, and Elena felt the weight of it, the warmth, the undeniable aliveness of the creature she'd saved. Then it pulled back and looked at her. Really looked at her, with an intensity that made Elena feel like she was being read, being known, in a way she'd never experienced. The wolf's form began to shimmer. Elena scrambled backward, her heart threatening to crack through her ribs. No, that's impossible. But impossible or not, it was happening. The wolf's body rippled like water disturbed by wind. Fur receded. Bones cracked and reformed with sounds that made Elena's stomach turn. The massive frame condensed, reshaped, became something else entirely. 30 seconds later, A man knelt where the wolf had been. He was naked. Elena's brain registered this with distant, hysterical embarrassment, and still covered in bandages she'd applied, still marked by the wounds that should have killed him. But he was undeniably, impossibly human. Or something that looked human, at least. He was tall, even kneeling. Broad-shouldered and muscular in a way that spoke of violence survived and battles won. His hair was dark and wild, falling past his shoulders, his eyes, those same golden eyes, fixed on her with unwavering focus. When he spoke, his voice was rough, like he was remembering how to form human words after too long without them. "You saved my life." It wasn't a question. But Elena found herself nodding anyway, mute with shock. The wolf glanced at the 5 remaining wolves, and something passed between them. Some wordless communication that Elena couldn't begin to interpret. Then he looked back at her. "I am Daryl Brooks," he said. "Alpha of the Northern Pack. King of the Wildlands. And I owe you a debt that cannot be measured in ordinary terms." Elena's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. You were. A wolf, yes. His expression was unreadable. "We all are. Shifters. My kind has lived in these forests for centuries. Long before your town was built on what was once our territory." "Shifters," Elena repeated numbly. "Werewolves. Not wolves bitten by curse or disease," Daryl corrected, something sharp entering his tone. "We are born this way. We are wolf, first and always, with the ability to take human form when needed. There's a difference." One of the other wolves, a massive rust-colored male, shifted as well, the transformation just as disturbing and impossible as the first. He was younger than Daryl, with a scar running through his left eyebrow and an easier smile. "I'm Andy Wyatt," he said, apparently unconcerned about his own nakedness. "Second of the pack. And you, human girl with the strange eyes, just saved the life of the most important wolf in 5 territories." "I didn't know," Elena managed. He was hurt. I couldn't just leave him to die." "Most of your kind would have," said a woman's voice. The silver female had shifted to a lean, athletic woman with white blonde hair and those same ice-chip eyes. "Most of your kind have tried to kill us for generations, hunted us, poisoned us, set traps that tear through flesh and bone." She gestured at Daryl's wounds. "These were made by hunters from your town. They found him separated from the pack, vulnerable, and they attacked with silver-laced weapons. He barely escaped." "Brad," Elena realized with cold certainty. Brad and his cousins, probably. They'd been bragging about going after the monster in the woods for weeks. She'd thought they were just being their usual cruel, boastful selves. "I'm sorry," she said, though the words felt pathetically inadequate. "I'm so sorry. If I'd known if I could have stopped them." "You saved him instead," Andy interrupted gently. "When you had every reason to fear him, every reason to leave him, you stayed. You used your supplies, your knowledge, your time to keep him alive through the night. That matters." Elena Mullins. Elena startled. "How do you know my name?" The silver woman smiled, and it wasn't entirely friendly. "We've been watching your town for years. We know everyone who lives there. But you've always been different. You smell different, like you don't quite belong to them." "I don't belong to anyone," Elena said before she could stop herself. "Exactly." Daryl pushed himself to his feet with visible effort, and Elena quickly looked away from his nakedness, heat flooding her face. "You're an outsider in your own community. Rejected, alone. Which makes what you did even more remarkable. You had no tribe to protect you if we'd decided to harm you. No pack to avenge you. You risked yourself for a stranger, an enemy of your people, because it was right." He took a step toward her, and Elena forced herself not to retreat. This close, she could smell him pine and rain and something wild, something that made her hindbrain scream danger even as another part of her hummed with strange recognition. "That kind of courage, that kind of mercy, deserves to be repaid," Daryl said softly. "And my kind take our debts seriously. Life debts most of all." "I don't want anything," Elena said quickly. "I didn't do it for a reward. You don't owe me." "Yes, I do." His voice was absolute, allowing no argument. "By the old laws that govern my people, by the bond that forms between saved and savior. I owe you a debt of life, and that debt will be paid, Elena Mullins, whether you ask for it or not. Something in his tone made her nervous. What does that mean? The wolves exchanged glances, significant looks that made Elena's anxiety spike higher. It means, said the silver woman Daryl still hadn't introduced her, that you're under the protection of the Northern Pack now. Anyone who harms you, harms us. Anyone who threatens you, threatens our alpha. And anyone who comes after you, will face the full fury of our kind. I don't need protection, Elena protested. Even though it was a lie, she'd needed protection her whole life and never had it. I'm fine on my own. Andy laughed, though it sounded sad. You live alone in a falling down cottage at the edge of a town that hates you. You barely have enough food to feed yourself, let alone share with injured wolves. You have no family, no friends, no one to stand between you and people like those hunters. You are many things, Elena Mullins. But fine is not one of them. The truth of it hit, like a physical blow. Elena wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the mild morning air. The debt must be balanced, Daryl said, and his voice had gone formal, ritualistic. You gave life when you could have given death. You offered mercy when you could have walked away. You stood between me and my enemies with nothing but your small human body as a shield. These things matter in the world of wolves. These things create bonds that cannot be broken. He held out his hand to her. Come with me. Back to our territory, our home. Let me show you what your kindness has earned. Elena stared at his outstretched hand like it was a snake. You want me to go into the forest? Into your territory? With a pack of werewolves? Shifters, Andy corrected automatically. I can't just leave, Elena said, grasping for reasons, for sanity. I have people will notice. They'll wonder where I am. The silver woman snorted. Will they? Or will they be relieved that the strange girl finally disappeared? Be honest with yourself, human. Elena wanted to argue. Wanted to insist that someone would care. Someone would look for her. But the words died in her throat because they would be lies. And somehow, she knew these wolves would hear the deception in her voice. Just come for today, Daryl said, his hand still extended. See what we are. Understand what your mercy saved. Then decide if you want to accept our protection or return to your lonely cottage and pretend this never happened. And if I say no right now? Elena asked. If I just walk away? Pain flickered across Daryl's face. Then you walk away, and I will honor that choice. But the debt remains unpaid. The bond remains unbalanced, and that, he shook his head, that would cause problems for both of us. Problems you don't yet understand. Elena looked around at the wolves, some still in animal form, watching her with those two intelligent eyes. At Andy with his easy warmth. At the silver woman with her cold assessment. At Daryl, wounded and powerful and looking at her like she was something precious, something worth saving in return. She thought about her cottage. About the way people crossed the street to avoid her. About the loneliness that had been her constant companion since grandmother died. About Brad Ritter's cruel smile and the knowledge that men like him would always exist, would always threaten anything weak or different or alone. She thought about the wolf's head pressed against her hand, trusting her not to hurt it even when it was helpless. Who else will help if you don't? Grandmother's voice, clear as day in her memory. Elena took Daryl's hand. His fingers closed around hers, warm and calloused and impossibly strong. Something sparked when their skin touched, like static electricity but deeper, more fundamental. Magic, maybe. Or something older than magic. Wise choice, Andy said, grinning. Fair warning though, our territory is about a 3-hour run from here. And we don't exactly have spare clothes lying around. Run? Elena squeaked. Daryl's mouth curved into something that might have been a smile on a face less intimidating. Don't worry. You won't have to walk. Then how? He shifted. One moment, a man holding her hand. The next, the massive wolf again, its golden eyes level with hers, its presence overwhelming. Andy and the others shifted too, forming a loose circle around her. Daryl knelt, an obvious invitation. You want me to ride you? Elena's voice went embarrassingly high. Like a horse? Andy, in wolf form, made a sound that was definitely laughter. Daryl lowered himself further, patient and waiting. Elena looked back toward town one last time. Toward the life she'd built from scraps and loneliness. Toward the cottage where she slept alone and ate alone and existed alone in a world that had decided she didn't quite fit. Then she climbed onto Daryl's back, her fingers sinking into his thick fur, her heart hammering with terror and excitement, and something that felt dangerously close to hope. Daryl stood smoothly, adjusting his stance so she could find her balance. Then he looked back at her one more time, those golden eyes asking a silent question. "Ready?" Elena nodded, and the wolves ran, the forest blurred around them. Elena had expected it to be terrifying, and it was, for the first few minutes. But then her body adjusted to the rhythm of Daryl's gait, and terror transformed into something else entirely. Exhilaration, freedom, the wind in her hair and the sun breaking through the canopy above, and the impossible speed of creatures built for this, born for this. The pack moved around them like a living shield, Andy on one side, the Silver Woman on the other, the remaining wolves spreading out in a protective formation. They communicated through sounds Elena couldn't interpret, movements she couldn't predict, existing in a harmony that made her ache with something she couldn't name. This was what belonging looked like. This was what family felt like. They ran for what felt like both hours and heartbeats, deeper into the forest than Elena had ever imagined going, farther from civilization than she'd ever been. The trees grew taller, older, more wild. The air changed, becoming charged with something Elena couldn't identify, power maybe, or just the weight of a place where humans rarely tread. Finally, they burst through a line of ancient oaks and into a valley that stole Elena's breath. It was beautiful. Impossibly, painfully beautiful. The valley stretched out before them, green and lush and alive in a way the world around Millbrook had never been. A river cut through the center, its water so clear Elena could see the stones at the bottom from here. Scattered throughout were structures not quite houses, not quite dens, something in between. Built from stone and wood and living vine, they seemed to grow from the earth itself. And everywhere were wolves. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Some in wolf form, some in human form, some shifting between as easily as breathing. Children played in wolf form, tumbling and yipping. Adults worked on various tasks, tending gardens, repairing structures, preparing food over open fires. It was a community, a civilization, a world Elena had never known existed. Daryl slowed to a walk as they entered the valley, and instantly, every wolf's attention snapped to them. To Elena. Specifically, the silence was absolute and terrifying. Then someone, a young male with rust-colored fur, let out a joyful howl. Others joined in, until the valley rang with the sound of celebration, of relief, of a king returned. Daryl stopped in front of the largest structure, a lodge built into the side of a cliff, its entrance flanked by ancient standing stones carved with symbols Elena couldn't read. He knelt, and Elena slid off his back on shaking legs. He shifted back to human form, and this time, someone immediately brought him clothes, simple leather pants, and a shirt that he pulled on with practiced ease. "Welcome," he said, turning to face her. "To the heart of the Northern Pack. Welcome to your new home, Elena Mullins." I'm not staying," Elena stammered. "You said just for today, just to see, and you will see." Daryl interrupted gently. "Everything. The truth of what we are, what we offer, what you saved. Then, at sunset, you can choose, stay, or return to your lonely cottage. But you'll choose with full knowledge of what you're choosing between." Before Elena could respond, the crowd parted, and an elderly woman approached. She was human-formed but moved with the grace of someone who'd spent centuries in both skins. Her hair was white as snow, her face lined with the kind of wisdom that came from surviving things that would break lesser people. "So," the old woman said, her voice like wind through leaves, "this is the human who saved our Alpha. The outsider who showed mercy when her own kind showed only cruelty." She circled Elena slowly, examining her with eyes that seemed to see straight through flesh and bone to whatever lay beneath. "Interesting," the old woman murmured. "Very interesting indeed. Tell me, child, do you know why your eyes are two different colors?" Elena blinked, thrown by the question. "It's just genetics. Heterochromia. It's rare but not Nothing about you is just anything, the old woman interrupted. Those eyes see two worlds at once, the world as it is, and the world as it could be. It's an old gift, child. A rare gift. The kind of gift that gets people like you burned as witches, or worshipped as oracles, depending on the century. I'm not special, Elena said automatically, the defense worn smooth by years of use. I'm just powerful, Daryl said quietly. You're powerful, Elena. You just don't know it yet. The old woman smiled, and it was unsettling. She will, though. Oh yes, she will learn exactly what she is. And when she does, she trailed off, looking between Elena and Daryl with something that might have been satisfaction or might have been concern. When she does, the old woman finished, everything will change. Chapter 3. The World Beneath the World. The old woman's name was Pamela Willard, and she was what the pack called a keeper, someone who remembered the old ways, who held the histories and laws in her mind like precious stones to be passed down through generations. She led Elena through the valley, while Daryl disappeared into the lodge with Andy and several other wolves, talking in low, urgent voices about things Elena couldn't hear. The silver woman who'd finally introduced herself as Kara Green, the pack's head warrior, trailed behind them like a suspicious shadow. You're wondering why we're being so nice to you, Pamela said without looking back. It wasn't a question. I saved Daryl's life, Elena replied carefully. You explained about the debt. I understand. You understand nothing, Pamela interrupted, but her tone was gentle, almost amused. The life debt is real, yes, sacred even. But that's not the only reason you're here, child. They passed a group of children, maybe 6 or 7 of them, all in wolf form, play fighting in a way that looked vicious, but was clearly monitored by watchful adults nearby. One of them, a small gray pup with oversized paws, broke away from the group and bounded toward Elena. Elena froze, unsure what to do. But the pup just circled her once, sniffing curiously, then yipped what sounded like a greeting before racing back to its siblings. They can sense it, Pamela said. Even the young ones. You smell right to them. Like pack, even though you're human. Even though you've never run with us, never hunted with us, never pledged loyalty to our alpha. She finally turned to look at Elena, her ancient eyes shrewd. Do you know what that means? That I'm good at fooling people into thinking I belong? Elena tried to joke, but it came out bitter. Kara snorted from behind them. Wolves can't be fooled by scent. It's not something you can fake or manipulate. You either smell like pack or you don't. And you, human, smell like pack. How is that possible? Elena asked. I'm not. I can't shift. I'm just human. Yes, Pamela agreed. But not just human. Haven't you ever wondered why you've always felt different? Why your town rejected you even though you'd done nothing to deserve it? Why you could see the worth in a dying wolf when everyone else would have seen only a monster? Elena's throat tightened. My grandmother used to say I had a gift, that my eyes let me see things others couldn't. But she never explained what she meant. She died before. Her voice cracked. She died before she could tell me the rest. Pamela's expression softened. Your grandmother was wise to keep some secrets. The world is not kind to those who are different. But you're safe here, child. Safe to be whatever you are, whatever you're meant to become. They reached a circular clearing near the river where several wolves lounged in both forms, talking and laughing with an ease Elena envied. A young woman with dark curls and warm brown skin looked up from where she was weaving something intricate from river grass. Pamela, is this her? The human who saved our alpha? This is Elena Mullins, Pamela confirmed. Elena, this is Lena Walker. She's one of our best healers. Lena sprang up with graceful energy and approached Elena with a bright smile that seemed utterly genuine. Thank you, she said simply. Thank you for saving him. Daryl he's important to all of us. If you'd let him die, she shook her head. I don't want to think about what would have happened to the pack. What would have happened? Elena asked, genuinely curious. The lightness drained from the clearing. Several wolves looked away. Lena's smile faltered. War, Kara said bluntly. There are other packs in these territories. Rivals who've been waiting for a sign of weakness. If word got out that our alpha died killed by human hunters, no less they would have seen it as an opportunity to claim our lands, our resources, our people. her ice-chip eyes fixed on Elena. Your mercy saved more than one life. It saved hundreds, possibly thousands, if the conflict had spread. The weight of it settled on Elena's shoulders like stones. She thought she was just helping an injured animal. She hadn't realized she was preventing a war. Don't let them scare you, Lena said quickly, shooting Kara an annoyed look. What matters is that Daryl is alive and healing. And now we get to meet you. Come, sit, tell us about yourself. Before Elena could protest, she was gently pulled down to sit on a smooth river stone, surrounded by wolves who looked at her with curiosity rather than hostility. It was disorienting and wonderful and terrifying all at once. Is it true you have two different colored eyes? Asked a young male, barely more than a teenager in appearance with sandy hair and an eager expression. Elena nodded slowly, and he leaned in to look closer. Wow, he breathed. That's so cool. I've never seen that before. Albert, don't be rude, Lena scolded, but she was smiling. Sorry, he's young. Still learning manners. Albert Hull, the boy said, grinning unrepentantly. I'm training to be a scout. It's nice to meet someone from the human town who doesn't want to kill us. Most humans don't even know you exist, Elena pointed out. No, Pamela agreed. But the ones who do, the hunters, the old families who remember the stories they've been trying to eradicate us for generations. Your friend Brad and his cousins come from one such family. Elena's stomach clenched. He's not my friend. We know, Kara said. We've been watching him, watching all the hunters in your town. They've killed 3 of our scouts in the past 2 years. Young wolves barely older than Albert, out on their first solo patrols. Her voice went cold. We've been patient, shown restraint, but patience has limits. Is that why Daryl was alone? Elena asked. Was he hunting them? No, said a deep voice behind her. Elena turned to find Daryl approaching, now fully dressed and looking stronger than he had that morning, though he still moved with careful precision around his healing wounds. The crowd parted for him automatically, that unconscious deference that spoke of deep respect and possibly fear. I was alone because I was foolish, Daryl continued, settling onto a rock across from Elena. I caught Brad's scent near our territory border, and followed it without calling for backup. I thought I could handle 3 humans with rifles. His mouth twisted bitterly. I underestimated their weapons. The silver in their bullets. It burns us in ways normal metal doesn't. Slows our healing, weakens us. Like supernatural kryptonite, Elena murmured. Several wolves looked confused, but Andy, who'd followed Daryl, laughed. Exactly like that. Except instead of making us weak, it just makes us die slower and more painfully. Andy, Lena said reproachfully. What? It's true. Daryl waved him off. The point is, I made a mistake. And I would have paid for it with my life if Elena hadn't found me, hadn't chosen to help me even when she had every reason to fear me, to leave me, to let nature take its course. I couldn't just leave you, Elena said quietly. I wouldn't leave anyone to die alone like that. And that, Pamela said with satisfaction, is exactly why you're here, why you're meant to be here. Elena looked around at the wolves surrounding her, young and old, warrior and healer, all watching her, with expressions ranging from curiosity to acceptance, to something that looked almost like hope. I still don't understand, she admitted. I'm just a human. I'm nobody special. What could I possibly offer a pack of, she gestured helplessly, of magical wolf people with superhuman abilities? Perspective, Daryl said immediately. Compassion. The ability to see worth where others see weakness, and, he hesitated, glancing at Pamela. The old woman nodded encouragement. And potentially, Daryl continued carefully, a bridge between our world and yours. A way to stop the violence before it escalates beyond the point of control. You want me to spy on the humans? Elena asked, a chill running through her. No, Lena said quickly. No, nothing like that. We want you to help us understand them, Daryl explained. The hunters in your town, they don't know us. They don't see us as people, as families, as beings worthy of life. They see monsters from stories, threats to be eliminated. But you saw an injured creature and you saw worth. You saw someone who deserved mercy. If you could help other humans see that. They won't listen to me, Elena interrupted, laughing bitterly. I'm the town outcast. the weird girl with the strange eyes. If I started talking about friendly werewolves in the forest, they'd lock me up or drive me out. Maybe, Pamela said, or maybe you'd be surprised by who might listen. But that's a concern for later. First, you need to understand what you're choosing between. You need to see all of what we are, the good and the difficult and the dangerous, before you can decide whether to accept our protection. What does that protection actually mean? Elena asked. You keep saying it, but what does it entail? Kara answered, her voice taking on a formal quality. Pack protection means you are considered one of ours. It means any attack on you is an attack on the pack. It means you have the right to call for aid and know it will come. It means you are fed when hungry, sheltered when cold, defended when threatened, and mourned when lost. She paused. It also means you owe loyalty in return. Not blind obedience. We're not a dictatorship. But respect for our laws, our customs, our alpha's authority, and honesty. Always honesty. Lies destroy packs faster than any external threat. Elena absorbed this, trying to imagine what it would mean to be part of something larger than herself. To have people, wolves, who would come if she called. Who would care if she disappeared? It sounded too good to be true, which meant there had to be a catch. What aren't you telling me? She asked, looking directly at Daryl. What's the part you're leaving out? His expression flickered with something that might have been respect, observant. I've had to be. He nodded slowly. The life debt creates a bond between us, between you and me specifically, though it extends to the pack by association. That bond is complicated. It's not just political or social, it's magical, fundamental. It means I can sense you, your location, your emotional state, whether you're in danger, and over time, as the bond strengthens, you'll likely be able to sense me too. That sounds. Elena struggled to find words. Invasive. It can be, Daryl admitted, but it also means you're never truly alone, never unprotected. If you're in danger, I'll know. I'll come, and nothing will stop me from reaching you. The intensity in his voice sent shivers down Elena's spine. It should have been frightening, maybe it was, but it was also intoxicating in a way she didn't want to examine too closely. There's more, Pamela said, earning a warning look from Daryl that she ignored. The bond can deepen, transform into something else entirely, something beyond debt, beyond duty. What do you mean? Elena asked, though something in her already knew, already understood from the way Daryl was looking at her. The mate bond. Lena said softly. It's rare, especially between human and wolf, but not impossible. And when there's already a life debt connecting two souls. She trailed off meaningfully. Elena's heart hammered. You think we're mates. I think, Pamela corrected, that the potential is there. The foundation has been laid. But these things can't be forced. Either the bond will deepen naturally, or it won't. Time will tell. Elena stood abruptly, needing space, needing air. This was too much. All of it was too much. She'd woken up this morning thinking she was just checking on an injured wolf, and now she was being told about magical bonds and potential mates and, I need to think, she said, her voice shaking. I can't. Then walk, Daryl said gently. Explore. The valley is safe. No one will bother you unless you wish for company. Take all the time you need. Elena nodded jerkily and fled before anyone could see the tears threatening to spill over. She walked for hours. The valley was larger than it had seemed from above, sprawling and diverse and full of life. She passed gardens where wolves in human form tended vegetables and herbs with careful attention. She saw training grounds where warriors sparred in both forms, their movements a deadly dance of controlled violence. She discovered what looked like a school, where young wolves in human form learned reading and writing and mathematics from patient teachers. They had a civilization here, a culture, a world complete unto itself, hidden in the forest while humans went about their lives mere miles away, completely oblivious. Everywhere she went, wolves watched her. But not with hostility. With curiosity. Yes. Wariness. Sometimes. But mostly with a kind of gentle acceptance that made her chest ache. Several times wolves approached to introduce themselves, a shy young woman named April Thompson who worked with the children, a gruff older male named Stanley Shoemaker who maintained the valley's defenses, a cheerful female named Sherry Maddox, who insisted Elena try some of the stew bubbling over her fire. Each interaction chipped away at her assumptions, at her fear. These weren't monsters. They were people, just people who could turn into wolves. People with families and jobs and problems and hopes just like anyone else. She found herself at the river's edge, as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. Her deadline was approaching. Soon she'd have to choose, return to Millbrook and her lonely cottage, or accept the pack's protection and whatever that might mean. "You look troubled," said a quiet voice. Elena turned to find a man she hadn't met yet sitting on a nearby rock. He was older, maybe 40, with gray threading through his dark hair and kind eyes that reminded her painfully of grandmother. "I'm Christopher Hodge," he said. "I'm the pack's historian, Pamela's apprentice, though she'd never admit she needs one." "Elena," she replied automatically. "I know. Everyone knows who you are by now. The human who saved our Alpha. The girl with the two colored eyes who smells like pack despite having no wolf blood." He smiled gently. "You're quite the mystery." "I don't want to be a mystery," Elena said tiredly. "I just want to, I don't know, belong somewhere. Be useful to someone. Not spend the rest of my life alone in a falling down cottage, eating stale bread and pretending I'm fine." Christopher nodded slowly. "Loneliness is a terrible burden, perhaps the worst one. Wolves understand that better than most. We're pack animals by nature. Isolation is a punishment for us, not a lifestyle. But I'm not a wolf." "No. But maybe that's precisely why you're valuable. Wolves need wolves, yes. But sometimes we also need someone who can see us from the outside, who can offer perspective we can't achieve ourselves." He paused. "Your grandmother, did she ever tell you why she lived where she did, right at the edge of the forest?" Elena blinked. "She said she liked the quiet, that she needed space from the town. She was a bridge," Christopher said softly, "between our world and yours. One of the few humans who knew about us and kept our secret. She helped us, sometimes healed wolves who couldn't reach our own healers, passed along information about hunters, warned us when danger was coming." Elena's world tilted. "You're lying." "I'm not. Ask Pamela if you don't believe me. Your grandmother saved the lives of at least 6 wolves during her time as I suppose you'd call her our liaison. She was a good woman, a brave woman, and she would be very proud of you right now." Tears spilled over. Elena couldn't stop them. "She never told me. Why didn't she tell me?" "Perhaps she was waiting until you were older. Or perhaps she feared what that knowledge might do to you, the burden it would place on your shoulders. Being a bridge between worlds is not an easy path, Elena. It means belonging fully to neither, being trusted completely by neither." He met her eyes steadily. "But it also means being uniquely positioned to prevent tragedies, to foster understanding, to save lives that would otherwise be lost to ignorance and fear. Like Daryl's life," Elena whispered. "Like Daryl's life," Christopher agreed. "And potentially many more if you choose this path." The sun touched the horizon, painting the valley in shades of amber and gold. Elena's deadline had arrived. She could go back. Return to her cottage, her solitude, her safe but empty existence. Pretend this had all been a strange dream, and never venture into the deep forest again. Or she could stay. Accept the protection, the bond, the complications. Step into the role her grandmother had apparently held, becoming a bridge between 2 worlds that desperately needed to understand each other better. It wasn't really a choice at all. "How do I do it?" Elena asked. "How do I accept the pack's protection officially?" Christopher smiled. "You tell the Alpha, and then you survive the bonding ceremony." "Survive?" Elena's voice squeaked. "I'm joking. Mostly." He stood, offering his hand. "Come. Daryl will be waiting." The entire pack had gathered in the central clearing by the time Elena and Christopher arrived. Hundreds of wolves in both forms, circled around a raised platform of smooth stone. Torches had been lit against the gathering darkness, their flames dancing like living things. Daryl stood at the center of it all, dressed in ceremonial leathers marked with symbols that glowed faintly in the firelight. He looked every inch the Alpha King, powerful and dangerous, and absolutely in command. His eyes found Elena immediately, and something in them made her breath catch. Hope, maybe. Or relief. or something deeper that she wasn't ready to name. The crowd parted silently, creating a path directly to him. Elena walked it on shaking legs, aware of every eye on her, every wolf measuring her worth and finding her. What? Wanting? Acceptable? The next catastrophic mistake their alpha was making? She reached the platform and climbed the steps. Daryl extended his hand, and she took it, that same spark of connection crackling between them. You came back, he said quietly, for her ears alone. I couldn't leave, Elena admitted. Even if I wanted to. Which I don't think I do. His smile transformed his entire face, making him look younger, less burdened. Then let's make it official. He turned to address the pack, his voice carrying effortlessly across the clearing. Elena Mullins, human of Millbrook, saved my life when she had no reason to, showed mercy when she could have walked away, stood between me and my enemies with nothing but courage and compassion as her weapons. By the old laws, she has earned a life debt from me and protection from us all. Does anyone challenge this? Silence. Absolute and complete. Does anyone question her worth? More silence. Though Elena noticed several wolves, including Kara, watching with expressions that suggested they had questions even if they weren't voicing them. Then by my authority as Alpha of the Northern Pack, I declare Elena Mullins to be under our protection. An attack on her is an attack on us. A threat to her is a threat to our territory. She is pack friend, oath-bound, and sacred under the moon's light. Does the pack accept? As one, hundreds of voices, human and wolf, howled their agreement. The sound raised every hair on Elena's body, primal and beautiful and terrifying. Daryl produced a small knife from his belt. Before Elena could ask what he intended, he drew it across his palm, blood welling immediately. Your hand, he said. Elena extended it with only slight hesitation. The cut was quick, clean, barely painful. Daryl pressed their bleeding palms together, and magic surged. Elena gasped as power flooded through her, wild and ancient and utterly foreign. She could feel Daryl's presence in her mind, his thoughts brushing against hers, his emotions bleeding into her awareness. Determination, relief, and underneath it all, something that felt dangerously like devotion. Then, just as quickly, the sensation muted, became bearable. A background hum of connection, instead of an overwhelming flood. The bond is formed, Pamela announced from somewhere in the crowd. Let all who witness remember. Let all who would harm her face our fury. She is pack friend. She is protected. She is ours. The pack howled again, and this time Elena felt it in her bones, in her blood, in the new connection thrumming between her and every wolf in the valley. She belonged. For the first time in her entire life, she truly belonged. Daryl squeezed her hand gently, drawing her attention back to him. Welcome home, Elena Mullins. And despite everything, the impossibility, the danger, the complications waiting in the shadows, Elena smiled. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for seeing me. Always, Daryl promised. I will always see you. The celebration lasted deep into the night. But Elena barely noticed the food, the music, the wolves congratulating her with genuine warmth. She was too busy feeling the bond, this new tether connecting her to Daryl and through him to the entire pack. She was home. Finally, impossibly home. But in the darkness beyond the torchlight, in the town of Millbrook where hunters sharpened their silver bullets and planned their next expedition into the forbidden forest, trouble was brewing. And Elena Mullins, bridge between two worlds, would soon discover that belonging to both meant being torn between them when the war she'd prevented finally began. Chapter 4. The Price of Two Worlds. Elena woke to sunlight streaming through windows she didn't recognize and the scent of pine and wood smoke that was nothing like her cottage. For a disorienting moment, panic seized her. Where was she? What had happened? Then memory flooded back. The bonding ceremony, the pack's acceptance. Daryl's palm pressed against hers, magic sealing a connection she still didn't fully understand. She sat up slowly, taking in her surroundings. She was in a small but comfortable room, wooden walls carved with intricate patterns, a window overlooking the valley, furs piled on the bed that were softer than anything she'd ever owned. Someone had left fresh clothes folded on a chair near the door, simple leather pants, and a tunic similar to what the other pack members wore. Her hand throbbed faintly. Elena looked down to find the cut from last night already healing, a thin pink line across her palm that should have taken days to close. Pack magic, she realized, already changing her, even in small ways. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," Elena called, then wondered if that was presumptuous. This wasn't her room. After all, she was a guest. Or something. Lena entered with a bright smile and a tray laden with food. "Good morning. I figured you'd be hungry. The bonding ceremony takes a lot out of people even when they're just receiving the bond rather than creating it." The tray held more food than Elena usually ate in 2 days. Fresh bread still warm from baking, honey, berries, strips of what looked and smelled like venison, and a clay mug filled with something that steamed invitingly. "This is too much," Elena protested, even as her stomach growled traitorously. "Eat," Lena insisted, setting the tray on the bed. "You're pack now. That means we feed you properly. Besides, Daryl will have my head if I let his." She stopped abruptly, something flickering across her face. "His what?" Elena asked. "His responsibility," Lena finished, but Elena heard the lie in it, heard what she'd almost said, "his mate." The word everyone was thinking but no one would say directly. Elena picked up the mug, some kind of herbal tea that tasted of mint and something earthier, and sipped to buy herself time. "Where is Daryl?" "Meeting with the council. There's been news from the border patrols." Lena's expression darkened. "The hunters from your town. They're planning something. Getting bolder." Elena's stomach clenched. "Brad. Him and others. They've been gathering more weapons, more silver. Christopher's sources in town say they're planning a major hunt. They want to prove the monster problem is real, get more people involved, maybe even bring in hunters from other towns." "I have to go back," Elena said immediately. "I have to warn them, stop them somehow." "You can't," Lena said gently. "Elena, if you go back now, smelling like pack, covered in our scent, they'll know. The hunters will know you've been with us. They'll see you as a traitor. Or worse, as someone who's been compromised, enchanted, turned into a thrall. I'm not any of those things. We know that. But they won't believe it. And Brad Ritter already has reason to hate you. You stood between him and Daryl that day in the forest. You think he's forgotten that? You think he won't use your connection to us as proof that you're dangerous?" Elena set down the mug with shaking hands. "So what am I supposed to do? Hide here while they hunt your people? Let them kill wolves because I'm too afraid to try stopping them? You're supposed to eat your breakfast," said Daryl's voice from the doorway. "And then come meet with the council. We need your perspective on this, Elena. Your knowledge of the town, the hunters, how they think and plan." He looked tired, Elena noticed. Dark circles under his golden eyes, tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there last night. The wounds from the hunter's attack were still visible beneath his shirt, pink scars that would fade but hadn't yet. "I'll leave you two alone," Lena said, slipping past Daryl with a knowing smile. Awkward silence filled the room after she left. Elena was suddenly very aware that she was sitting in bed in borrowed sleeping clothes, while an incredibly attractive and intimidating werewolf king stood in her doorway. "How are you feeling?" Daryl asked, moving into the room but keeping his distance, as if aware of her discomfort. "Confused, overwhelmed, like I made a decision last night that's going to have consequences I can't predict." Elena met his eyes. "How are you feeling? You're the one who got shot with silver bullets 3 days ago." "Better." He flexed his arm, demonstrating the improved range of motion. "Your initial treatment saved my life, and now that I'm home, my healing is accelerated. I'll be fully recovered in another day or 2. That's impossible. That's pack magic. That's what you're connected to now." He gestured to her hand. "You're already healing faster. Soon you'll notice other changes too. Enhanced senses, smell, hearing, vision, increased strength and stamina. Nothing like what we have, but more than typical humans. The bond alters you, bit by bit, making you more compatible with the pack." Elena wasn't sure how she felt about being altered, even if the changes seemed beneficial. What if I don't want to be changed? Then the changes will be minimal. The bond responds to acceptance. If you fight it, resist it, the alterations remain superficial. But if you embrace it— He trailed off, something intense entering his expression. "If you embrace it, the possibilities are remarkable, And the mate bond? Elena asked before she could lose her nerve. If that happens, if it deepens into that, would it change me more? Make me less human? Daryl was quiet for a long moment. The mate bond is the deepest connection two souls can share. It would make you more yourself. Not less human. But yes, the magic would be stronger. The changes more pronounced. You'd live longer, age slower, possibly gain the ability to communicate mentally with the pack mind. He paused. But mate bonds can't be forced, Elena. They either develop naturally or they don't. And they require consent, full, enthusiastic consent from both parties. I would never pressure you into that. But you want it, Elena said. It wasn't a question. Yes, Daryl admitted quietly. From the moment you put your hands on my wounds, when you could have left me to die, when you showed mercy no one else would have offered, something in me recognized you, claimed you, wanted you. His voice dropped lower. But wanting isn't the same as having. And I will not take what isn't freely given. Your pack friend, oath-bound and protected, that's enough. It has to be enough. The raw honesty in his voice made Elena's chest ache. She thought about her cottage in Millbrook, about the loneliness that had been her constant companion, about waking up every day knowing no one cared whether she lived or died, whether she was happy or suffering. And she thought about last night, the pack's acceptance, the warmth of belonging, the way Daryl looked at her like she was something precious and rare. I don't know what I want, she admitted. This is all too new, too fast. But I know I don't want to go back to being alone. And I know that she struggled to find words. I feel something when you're near, something I don't have a name for yet. So maybe the bond knows something we don't. Maybe it sees something we're too blind to see. Daryl's expression softened. Then we'll take it slow. Day by day. No pressure. No expectations. Just being near each other. Learning each other. And if the bond deepens, it deepens. If it doesn't, you're still pack. Still protected. Still valued. Okay. Elena whispered. Okay. He smiled a real smile, warm and genuine. Now eat your breakfast. The council meeting will be long and probably frustrating, and you'll need your strength. The council met in the Great Lodge, around a massive wooden table carved from a single ancient tree. 12 wolves sat in attendance, the most senior and respected members of the pack. Elena recognized a few: Pamela, Kara, Andy, Christopher. The others were strangers, but they all watched her with expressions ranging from curious to skeptical. Daryl took his seat at the head of the table and gestured for Elena to sit beside him. The action wasn't lost on anyone, placing her in the position typically reserved for the alpha's mate or most trusted advisor. Thank you all for coming, Daryl began. I know some of you have concerns about our newest pack friend. I'm asking you to table those concerns for now and focus on the immediate threat. The hunters in Millbrook are planning a major assault on our territory. A grizzled older male with scars crisscrossing his face, someone Elena didn't know, spoke up. How do we know this? What's the source? Christopher's network, Daryl replied. He has humans in town who owe us favors, who believe in coexistence. They've reported increased activity among the hunting families, weapons stockpiling, planning meetings, and he paused meaningfully, they're recruiting, trying to convince other townspeople that the monster threat is real and growing. Brad Ritter is leading this, Elena said quietly. All eyes turned to her. He's wanted to make a name for himself his whole life. Killing a werewolf, killing the werewolf king, that would make him a hero in certain circles. He's not going to stop just because he failed once. So we eliminate him, Kara said flatly. Remove the head of the snake before it can strike. No, Elena said sharply. If Brad dies under suspicious circumstances, it will only confirm everyone's fears. His cousins will take over. Even more motivated. Even more dangerous. The cycle will just continue. Then what do you suggest? Kara challenged. We wait for them to attack? Let them kill more of our scouts? More of our young? I suggest we change the narrative, Elena replied, the idea forming even as she spoke. Right now, you're monsters in their stories, unknown threats in the dark. But what if they could meet you? See that you're people, that you have families and homes and lives worth protecting. That's insanely naive, the scarred male growled. Humans don't want to see us as people. They want to see us as animals to be hunted or threats to be eliminated. Some humans, yes, Elena agreed. But not all. My grandmother knew about you, helped you. Christopher says she was a bridge between the worlds. I could be that bridge too. I could bring people here. Not the hunters, but others. People who might listen. People who might be willing to see the truth. And lead them straight to our home? Kara's voice dripped with skepticism. Give them a map to our families, our children? That's not bridge building. That's suicide. It's a risk, Daryl said thoughtfully. But potentially a calculated one. If we could sway even a portion of the town to our side, it would weaken Brad's position, make it harder for him to recruit, harder for him to justify violence. And if it backfires, the scarred male demanded. If Elena betrays us intentionally or not. If she leads hunters here instead of peacekeepers. She won't, Daryl said with absolute certainty. The bond won't allow it. I would feel her deception, her betrayal, long before it could cause harm. And more importantly, his gaze swept the council. I trust her. She saved my life when she could have taken it. That means something. It means she made one good choice, another council member, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes, pointed out. It doesn't mean she'll continue making good choices when the pressure increases. When she has to choose between our safety and her own people's demands. Elena understood their skepticism. She was an outsider, unknown, unproven. In their position, she'd have the same doubts. Test me, she said suddenly. Give me a trial. Let me prove I'm trustworthy before you commit to any plan involving me. Pamela's eyes gleamed with interest. What kind of trial? I don't know. You tell me. What would convince you that I'm loyal to the pack, that I won't betray your secrets? The council members exchanged glances. Some kind of wordless communication passed between them, pack-mind. Elena realized. They were discussing her proposal in a way she couldn't hear or participate in. Finally, Daryl spoke. There's a task that needs doing. Dangerous, requiring human interaction. We've been putting it off because sending wolves into town is too risky right now. But you could do it. What is it? Elena asked. There's a young girl in Millbrook, 10 years old. Her name is Juana Leonard. She's sick, dying. Actually. Some kind of blood disease the human doctors can't cure. Daryl's expression was grim. But we can cure it. Lena has the knowledge, the herbs, the magic. She could save this child's life. So why haven't you? Elena asked. Because Juana's father is Patrick Leonard, one of the hunters, one of Brad's closest allies. Andy's voice was heavy. If we approach them, they'll think it's a trick. A trap. They'll shoot first and ask questions never. But if you approached them, Daryl continued, if you brought the cure and explained where it came from, they might listen. Might accept. And if we save their daughter, if we prove that we're not the monsters they believe we are, it could change everything. Elena's mind raced. Or it could go horribly wrong. Patrick could take the cure, use it to save his daughter, and then come after you anyway. People aren't always rational, especially where their families are concerned. That's the risk, Daryl agreed. But it's also the test. Can you convince a hunter to trust wolves enough to accept our help? Can you plant the seed of doubt in their certainty that we're evil? Can you be the bridge your grandmother was? It was a test, yes. But more than that, it was a chance to save a child's life. And Elena had never been able to turn away from someone who needed help. I'll do it, she said. Tell me what I need to know about Juana's illness, what the cure requires, and how to administer it. I'll go to the Leonards. Kara leaned forward, her ice-chip eyes boring into Elena. And if Patrick Leonard tries to kill you for approaching his house with witch magic, if he decides you're in league with the monsters and need to be eliminated, then I guess we'll find out if the pack's protection means anything, Elena replied evenly. A tense silence fell over the council. Then Pamela laughed, a dry, crackling sound. She has spine. I'll give her that. Foolish spine, perhaps. But spine nonetheless. It's settled then, Daryl said, though his expression suggested he was far from comfortable with the plan. Lena will prepare the cure. Christopher will provide Elena with information about the Leonard family, their routines, the best approach. And Elena, his eyes locked with hers, "You'll go tomorrow at dawn. The bond will let me feel if you're in danger, but I won't be close enough to help immediately if things go wrong. So don't let things go wrong. No pressure," Elena muttered. Andy grinned. "Welcome to pack life. It's all impossible tasks and life or death decisions. But hey, at least you're never bored." The council moved on to other business border patrols, supply needs, training schedules. Elena tried to pay attention, but her mind kept circling back to the task ahead. She was going to walk up to a hunter's house and try to convince him to trust the creatures he'd spent years trying to kill. She was going to offer magic as medicine and hope he didn't shoot her on sight. She was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid, probably both. That evening, Lena took Elena to her healing lodge, a structure built partially into the hillside, its interior lined with shelves holding hundreds of jars and bundles of herbs. The air was thick with competing scents, mint and sage, something bitter, something sweet, combinations Elena couldn't begin to identify. "Juana's illness is in her blood," Lena explained, pulling various containers from shelves with practiced efficiency. "The human doctors call it aplastic anemia. Her bone marrow has stopped producing enough new blood cells. Without treatment, she'll die within months. With human treatment transfusions, drugs, she might live a few years, but never well. Always sick, always weak." "But you can cure it?" Elena asked. "Not cure. Heal. There's a difference." Lena began mixing ingredients in a stone bowl. Dried flowers, crushed roots, something that looked like moss. Human medicine treats symptoms. Pack magic addresses root causes. This remedy will wake her bone marrow back up, remind it of its purpose, restore the balance that disease disrupted. That sounds too good to be true. "It's not without cost." Lena's expression grew serious. "Magic always has a cost. For Juana, the cost is small. She'll be bound to the land, to this forest. She won't be able to leave for long periods without feeling weak, sick. She'll need to return regularly, to spend time among the trees that healed her. It's a subtle tether, but a real one. And her parents won't understand that," Elena said, her heart sinking. "They'll think it's another curse, another trick. Maybe they'll see it as a small price to pay for their daughter's life. That's for them to decide, and for you to explain." Lena poured liquid into the bowl, something clear that made the mixture sizzle and smoke. "The medicine needs to be taken 3 times, at dawn, at noon, at dusk. 1 dose each time. If she completes all 3 doses, the healing will take hold. Miss even one, and it won't work. What if Patrick won't let her take it? What if he thinks I'm poisoning her? Then she dies." Lena's voice was matter of fact, but Elena heard the pain beneath. "We can't force healing on people who don't want it. All we can do is offer, and hope they're smart enough to accept." She decanted the mixture into 3 small glass vials, each one stoppered with cork and sealed with wax. "Don't let these break. Don't let them get too hot or too cold. And don't let Patrick Leonard see them until you've already explained everything, otherwise he might destroy them on principle." Elena took the vials carefully, tucking them into a leather pouch Lena provided. They were warm to the touch, almost alive, pulsing gently with contained magic. "Lena," Elena asked quietly, "why are you helping a hunter's daughter? Patrick Leonard has probably killed wolves. Maybe people you knew, cared about. Why would you want to save his child?" Lena was quiet for a long moment, her hands stilling over her work. "Because she's a child," she finally said. "Because she's innocent of her father's crimes. And because if we're ever going to break this cycle of violence, someone has to take the first step toward mercy. Your grandmother understood that. And I think, Elena Mullins, that you understand it too." Tears pricked Elena's eyes. She blinked them back, focusing on the vials in her pouch. "What if I fail? What if I make things worse?" "Then you fail. Then things get worse. But at least you tried. At least you offered compassion when you could have offered nothing." Lena smiled sadly. "That's all any of us can do, really. Try, hope, offer mercy, and pray it's accepted." Elena left the healing lodge with medicine that could save a life and no idea how to convince a hunter to trust it. She found Daryl on the training grounds, working through combat forms despite his still healing wounds. His movements were fluid and precise, each strike and block executed with the kind of control that came from decades of practice. He sensed her approach the bond, probably, and stopped, turning to face her with that intense focus that made her feel seen in ways she wasn't used to. "Nervous about tomorrow?" he asked. "Terrified," Elena admitted. "What if I get Juana killed by bringing her medicine her father won't let her take? What if Patrick shoots me before I can explain? What if you succeed?" Daryl interrupted gently. "What if Patrick Leonard sees his daughter's miracle and realizes we're not the monsters he thought? What if you save a life and plant the seeds for peace?" "That seems optimistic." "I'm not known for my optimism," Daryl said wryly. "But I do know that change has to start somewhere. Someone has to take the risk. And you," he reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek so gently she barely felt it. "You've been taking risks for people who didn't deserve your mercy your whole life. What's one more? This one could start a war. Or prevent one." His hand dropped, but his eyes stayed locked on hers. "I meant what I said, Elena. I can feel you through the bond. If you're in real danger, I'll know. And I'll come. Nothing will stop me from reaching you." The intensity of the promise should have been frightening. Instead, it felt like safety. Like being seen and valued and protected in ways she'd never experienced. "Thank you," she whispered, "for trusting me with this. For giving me a chance to prove I'm worth your faith." "You already proved that," Daryl said simply. "This is just you being who you've always been, someone who helps because it's right. Not because it's easy." Elena wanted to kiss him. The urge came out of nowhere, sudden and overwhelming. She wanted to close the distance between them, to feel his lips on hers, to let the bond deepen into something more than oath and obligation. But she didn't. Not yet. It was too soon, too complicated, too much when she still had a nearly impossible task waiting for her at dawn. "I should rest," she said instead. "Tomorrow's going to be challenging." "It will be," Daryl agreed. "But you won't face it alone. The pack will be watching, waiting, ready to help if needed. Even if I fail, especially if you fail. Failure doesn't make you less pack, Elena. It just makes you someone who tried something difficult and needs support." He smiled. "That's what family does. Family." The word settled over Elena like a warm blanket. She had family now. Had people who would catch her if she fell, who would mourn her if she died, who would celebrate her if she succeeded. She wasn't alone anymore. And that, she was beginning to realize, changed everything. Chapter 5. The Hunter's Daughter. Elena barely slept. She spent the night in her borrowed room, staring at the ceiling and running through 1,000 different scenarios. In some, Patrick Leonard listened to her explanation and gratefully accepted the medicine. In others, he shot her the moment she stepped onto his property. In the worst ones, he took the medicine but destroyed it, and Juana died while Elena watched, helpless. By the time the first gray light of dawn crept through her window, Elena was exhausted but wired, her nerves singing with anticipation and dread. A soft knock came at her door. "It's time," Daryl's voice called quietly. Elena dressed quickly in the clothes Christopher had provided, simple, nondescript, the kind of thing she might have worn in Millbrook. The leather pouch with the 3 vials hung heavy against her hip, each one warm with contained magic. She checked them obsessively, making sure the wax seals were intact, that nothing had broken during the night. Daryl waited outside her door with Andy, Kara, and Christopher. They all looked grim, ready for violence if this went wrong. "The Leonard house is on the eastern edge of Millbrook," Christopher said, handing her a hand-drawn map. "Patrick works at the lumber mill. He'll leave for his shift around 7. His wife, Pearl, stays home with Juana. Your best chance is to approach when Patrick is gone. Talk to Pearl first." "Pearl Calderon," Elena said, recognition sparking. "Before she married, her name was Calderon. She's the one who gives me herbs sometimes, in exchange for odd jobs." Christopher nodded. "Pearl is less extreme than her husband. She's desperate to save her daughter. That desperation might make her more open to unconventional solutions. Or more suspicious that I'm trying to take advantage of her pain," Elena countered. "Either way, she's your best point of entry." Kara stepped forward, pressing something into Elena's hand. A knife, small and sharp, in a leather sheath. "Just in case." Elena stared at the weapon. I don't know how to use this. Then don't use it unless you absolutely have to. But better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Kara's ice chip eyes were serious. Patrick Leonard has killed 3 of our scouts. He's dangerous, Elena. Don't underestimate him just because he's human. I won't. Elena tucked the knife into her boot, where it pressed uncomfortably against her ankle. Another weight, another responsibility. Daryl stepped closer, his presence warm and solid. I'll be able to feel you through the bond. If you're in immediate danger, if your fear spikes beyond normal nervousness, I'll come. But I can't be there instantly. So be smart, be careful. And if it goes wrong, run. Don't be a hero. Isn't that exactly what I'm being right now? Elena tried to joke, but it came out shaky. No. Right now you're being brave. There's a difference. He cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. The touch sent warmth flooding through the bond, reassurance, faith, and something deeper that Elena didn't have time to examine. Come back safe. That's an order from your alpha. Yes, sir. Elena whispered. He smiled, then reluctantly let her go. Andy will accompany you to the edge of the forest. After that, you're on your own. The walk to Millbrook's border felt both endless and far too short. Andy kept up an easy stream of conversation stories about the pack, jokes that made Elena laugh despite her nerves, casual observations about the forest that helped ground her in the moment rather than the terrifying future. You know, Andy said as they neared the tree line, when Daryl first told us about you, I didn't believe him. Didn't believe a human would risk herself for a dying wolf. Thought maybe you had ulterior motives. Or you were confused. Or it was some kind of trick. And now? Elena asked. Now I think you're exactly what the pack needs. Someone who sees past the surface, past the fear, to the truth underneath. He grinned. Also, you make Daryl smile. I haven't seen him genuinely smile in years. That alone makes you valuable. Elena felt heat rise in her cheeks. We're not. Not yet. Andy agreed easily. But you will be. Anyone with eyes can see the bond forming. It's just a matter of time. They reached the edge of the forest, where trees gave way to cleared farmland and, in the distance, the scattered buildings of Millbrook. Dawn had fully broken now, painting everything in shades of pink and gold. This is where I leave you, Andy said. Remember Pearl first, if possible. Be honest but careful. And if Patrick comes home early. He trailed off meaningfully. Run, Elena finished. I know. Good luck, Elena Mullins. The pack is with you, even if we can't be beside you. Then he shifted that still disturbing transformation from man to massive wolf and melted back into the forest shadows. Elena was alone. She took a deep breath, checked the vials one more time, and started walking toward Millbrook, toward the Leonard's house, toward a conversation that could save a life or end her own. The Leonard house was modest but well-maintained, a 2-story structure with a small garden out front and smoke rising from the chimney. As Elena approached, she saw Patrick's truck pulling out of the driveway, heading toward the lumber mill. Perfect timing. She waited until the truck disappeared around a bend, then walked up to the front door and knocked before she could lose her nerve. Footsteps inside. A shadow crossing behind the curtained window. Then the door opened, and Pearl Leonard stood there, older than Elena remembered, more worn down, with circles under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and desperate prayers. Elena? Pearl's voice was surprised but not hostile. What are you doing here so early? Mrs. Leonard. Pearl, I need to talk to you. It's about Juana. All the color drained from Pearl's face. What about her? Has something happened? Did someone from the hospital? No, nothing like that. Please, can I come in? I have something that might help her. Something important. Pearl's expression cycled through confusion, hope, and suspicion in rapid succession. Help her how? The doctors have tried everything. They said there's nothing more they can do except make her comfortable. I know, but I've found something the doctors don't know about. A treatment that could heal her, not just ease her symptoms. Elena pulled the leather pouch from her hip, but didn't open it yet. Please, just let me explain. If you don't believe me, if you think I'm lying or crazy, I'll leave. But Juana deserves every chance, doesn't she? That last question broke through Pearl's hesitation. She stepped back, opening the door wider. Come in. But if this is some kind of cruel joke, it's not. I swear it's not. The Leonard house smelled like cinnamon and sickness, that particular combination of home-cooked attempts at normalcy and the underlying scent of a body failing. Pearl led Elena to the kitchen, where morning light streamed through windows overlooking the garden. Juana's sleeping, Pearl said quietly. She has good days and bad days. Today started as a good day, but she trailed off, grief etched in every line of her face. Tell me what you have, please. Elena set the leather pouch on the table but kept her hands on it. What I'm about to tell you is going to sound impossible. Insane, even. But I need you to listen all the way through before you decide I'm crazy, okay? Pearl nodded slowly, her eyes fixed on the pouch. The wolves in the forest, they're not just wolves. They're people, shifters. They can take human form, and they have knowledge, magic, medicine that humans don't understand. I know that sounds impossible, Pearl breathed. Elena, you're talking about werewolves. About monsters from children's stories. I'm talking about people who happen to be wolves, Elena corrected firmly. People with families and homes and lives. People who don't want war with humans but keep getting hunted anyway. People who have been watching Millbrook, who know about the families here, who know that your daughter is dying. Pearl's face had gone very still. And these people. They have medicine for Juana? Yes. Elena opened the pouch, carefully removing the 3 vials. They glowed faintly in the morning light, the liquid inside swirling with colors that had no names. This was prepared by one of their healers. It's specifically made for Juana's illness for her failing bone marrow. 3 doses, dawn, noon, and dusk. If she takes all 3, it will heal her. Not just treat her symptoms, but actually heal the root cause. Pearl reached out, then hesitated, her fingers hovering over the vials. Why? Why would they help us? Patrick has been hunting them for years. He's killed. She stopped, horror dawning. Oh God. Patrick has killed them. They're people. And they want to help his daughter anyway? Because she's innocent, Elena said quietly. Because punishing a child for her father's crimes isn't justice. It's just more cruelty. And because they're trying to show all of us that they're not the monsters we've been told they are. Tears spilled down Pearl's cheeks. What's the catch? There's always a catch with magic. What does this cost? Elena hesitated. The healer told me there's a small binding. Juana will be connected to the forest, to the land here. She won't be able to leave for long periods without feeling weak. She'll need to come back, to spend time among the trees regularly. It's not a terrible price, but it's real. She'd be alive, Pearl whispered. She'd be alive, and just need to stay near home. That's nothing compared to losing her. She picked up one of the vials with shaking hands. You're sure this will work? This isn't some kind of trick to hurt us more? I swear on my grandmother's grave, Elena said intensely. This is real. This will work. But Pearl, Patrick can't know where it came from. Not yet. If he knows the wolves are involved. He'll destroy it, Pearl finished, her voice hardening. He'll destroy the medicine, and let Juana die, rather than accept help from monsters. I know my husband, Elena. I know what his pride and his hatred have cost us. She looked down at the vial in her hands, then toward the stairs where her daughter lay sleeping, maybe for one of the last times, if this medicine didn't work. Tell me exactly how to administer it, Pearl said, her voice steady despite the tears still streaming down her face. Tell me what to watch for, what might go wrong. Tell me everything. Elena spent the next hour explaining every detail Lena had provided. How to prepare Juana, what the medicine might taste like, potential side effects during the healing process. Pearl absorbed it all with fierce concentration, asking sharp questions that showed she was truly listening, truly understanding. The dawn dose needs to be taken in the next few minutes, Elena said, glancing at the lightening sky. Do you want me to help? Or should I leave and let you stay? Pearl interrupted. Please. If something goes wrong, if I need help, you know more about this than I do. They climbed the stairs together, Pearl clutching the first vial like it contained liquid hope, which Elena supposed it did. Juana's room was small and painted a cheerful yellow that contrasted sharply with the medical equipment clustered around her bed. The girl herself was tiny for 10 years old, her skin pale and papery, dark circles making her eyes look too large in her thin face. But when Pearl gently shook her awake, those eyes opened bright and alert, filled with the kind of spirit that illness hadn't managed to crush. "Mama?" Juana's voice was soft, tired. "Is it time for medicine already?" "A different medicine, baby." Pearl sat on the edge of the bed, smoothing hair back from Juana's forehead. "Miss Elena brought something special. Something that might make you better. Really better. Not just feel better for a little while." Juana's gaze shifted to Elena, studying her with unexpected intensity. "You're the lady with the different colored eyes. I've seen you in town. People say you're weird." "I am weird," Elena agreed, smiling. "But sometimes weird people know about solutions that normal people miss." "What kind of solution?" Juana asked, eyeing the vial warily. Pearl uncorked it, and the scent that filled the room was strange. Earthy and sweet and wild, like the forest after rain. "It's medicine from the forest. Very special medicine. It's going to taste odd, but you need to drink all of it, okay? Can you be brave for me?" "I'm always brave," Juana said, and there was no boast in it, just simple truth. A child who'd spent years being poked and prodded and poisoned with chemotherapy, who'd learned to face pain with courage because she had no other choice. Pearl helped her sit up, propping pillows behind her back. Then she held the vial to Juana's lips. The girl drank. Her face scrunched up immediately. "That tastes like dirt and flowers had a baby." Elena couldn't help but laugh. "That's actually a pretty accurate description." For a moment, nothing happened. Elena's heart sank. What if it didn't work? What if Lena had been wrong? Or the medicine had gone bad somehow? Then Juana gasped. Light bloomed beneath her skin, faint but definitely there, tracing the paths of her veins like golden rivers. Her eyes widened, and she looked down at her arms in wonder. "Mama? Mama, what's happening?" "You're healing, baby," Pearl whispered, tears streaming freely now. "You're healing." The light pulsed brighter for a heartbeat, then faded, sinking deeper into Juana's body. Color began returning to her cheeks, subtle but real. Her breathing eased, became less labored. "I feel different," Juana said wonderingly. "Not bad different, good different. Like something inside me that was broken just fixed itself." Elena felt the bond with Daryl pulse. He was feeling her relief, her joy, the success of this first dose. She sent back reassurance, gratitude, hope. "2 more doses," Elena reminded Pearl. "One at noon, one at dusk. Don't miss either of them." Pearl nodded, clutching the remaining vials. "I won't. I swear I won't." She looked at Elena with an expression of profound gratitude mixed with dawning horror. "Patrick comes home at 6. He'll ask questions. He'll want to know what changed, why Juana looks better. Tell him you prayed," Elena suggested quietly. "Tell him it's a miracle. It's not even a lie, just not the whole truth. And maybe once Juana is fully healed, once she's strong and healthy and alive, maybe then you can tell him the rest. When he can't deny what he's seeing, and if he still chooses hatred over gratitude," Pearl asked, "then that's his choice, his loss. But Juana will be alive, and that's what matters most." Pearl reached out and took Elena's hand, squeezing tightly. "Thank you. Thank you for caring about a stranger's child. Thank you for risking yourself to bring us hope." I can't." Her voice broke. "You don't have to thank me," Elena said gently. "Just take care of her. Give her all 3 doses. Let the healing complete. That's thanks enough." She stood to leave, and Juana's voice stopped her. "Miss Elena? Are the forest people really real? The ones who made the medicine?" Elena hesitated, glancing at Pearl, who nodded permission. "Yes," Elena said. "They're real. And they're not monsters, no matter what people say. They're just different. And hoping that humans can learn to see past the difference to the people underneath. I'd like to meet them someday," Juana said thoughtfully, "to thank them for saving me." "Maybe you will," Elena replied, smiling. "Maybe we'll build a world where that's possible." Elena left through the back door, as Pearl requested less chance of being seen by neighbors who might mention her visit to Patrick. She walked quickly through Millbrook's quiet morning streets, keeping her head down, trying to look like she belonged there rather than like someone who'd just delivered magical wolf medicine to a dying child. She was nearly to the forest edge when she heard the truck. Elena's heart stopped. She knew that truck had seen it pulling out of the Leonard driveway just an hour ago. Patrick was home early. She broke into a run, abandoning all pretense of casualness. The trees were so close, just 50 yards away, and she could feel Daryl through the bond. Feel him responding to her spike of fear. The truck screeched to a halt beside her, and Patrick Leonard jumped out, rifle in hand. "You," he snarled. And Elena had never heard so much hatred in a single word. "I knew you were trouble. Knew you were working with those monsters. What did you do to my house? What did you give to Pearl?" "Medicine," Elena gasped, still backing toward the trees. "Just medicine. Your daughter is sick, and I brought something that could help her. That's all. I swear that's all." "Liar." Patrick raised the rifle, aiming directly at Elena's chest. "My wife would never accept devil magic into our home. Would never let you near Juana. You're lying. Or you've enchanted her, or your daughter is dying," Elena shouted, abandoning caution. "She has months left, maybe weeks, and I brought medicine that could save her life. Real medicine. Patrick, not a curse, not a trick. Just a chance for Juana to live. Don't you want that? Not if it costs her soul." Patrick's finger tightened on the trigger. "Not if it means owing those monsters, those abominations. Better she dies clean than lives corrupted." Elena stared at him, horror and rage warring in her chest. "You'd rather let your daughter die than accept help from beings you don't understand. That's not love, Patrick. That's just pride and fear wearing love's mask. You don't get to tell me about love." Patrick spat. "You're one of them now. I can smell it on you, wolf stink, corruption. Brad was right about you. Should have driven you out years ago." He pulled the trigger. The shot rang out, impossibly loud in the quiet morning. Elena felt something slam into her shoulder. Not pain, not yet, just impact and shock, and the sudden understanding that she'd been shot. She stumbled backward, her hand going to her shoulder and coming away red. "Elena." Daryl's roar came from the forest, furious, terrified, inhuman. Then he was there, bursting from the trees in wolf form, moving faster than anything that size should be able to move. Patrick swung the rifle toward the wolf, but Andy was already there too, slamming into Patrick from the side, sending both man and gun flying. Kara materialized beside Elena, already shifting to human form, her hands immediately pressing against the wound. "You're okay. You're okay. It's not silver, just a regular bullet. You'll be fine." But Elena couldn't focus on Kara's words. She could only watch as Daryl, still in wolf form, stood over Patrick Leonard with fangs bared and murder in his golden eyes. "Don't kill him," Elena gasped, trying to push herself up despite Kara's restraining hands. "Daryl, please, don't kill him. His daughter, she took the medicine. If he dies now, it ruins everything. Please." For a long, terrible moment, Daryl didn't move, didn't even seem to hear her. He was pure predator, pure rage, focused entirely on the human who dared shoot his what? His pack friend? His responsibility? His mate? Then, slowly, he lifted his head and looked at Elena. Blood dripped from her shoulder, staining her shirt, and something in his eyes shifted. The rage didn't disappear, but it was contained, controlled, leashed by will alone. He shifted to human form, his transformation swift and violent, and rounded on Patrick with barely restrained fury. "You shot her. She came to save your child's life. And you shot her." Patrick scrambled backward, terror written across his face. "Monster. You're all monsters. I knew it. I knew." "Your daughter is being healed as we speak," Daryl interrupted coldly. "By our medicine, our magic, freely given despite everything you've done to us. And when she wakes this evening, fully cured, finally healthy for the first time in years, you'll know exactly who you owe that miracle to. You'll know who the real monsters are, the ones who offer mercy, or the one who shoots the messenger." He turned away from Patrick with contempt, crossing to where Kara was bandaging Elena's shoulder with strips torn from her own shirt. "Can you walk?" "I think so," Elena said, though the pain was starting to cut through the shock now. sharp and insistent. Then we're leaving. Andy, Kara, with me. Patrick. Daryl looked back over his shoulder. If you ever aim a weapon at Elena Mullins again, I will forget my restraint. I will forget mercy. And I will show you exactly what monsters can do when someone threatens what's theirs. Are we clear? Patrick didn't answer, just stared at them with wild eyes, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. Let's go, Daryl said quietly, helping Elena to her feet. They walked back into the forest, Andy and Kara flanking them, Daryl supporting most of Elena's weight as she stumbled through the trees. Behind them, they left Patrick Leonard sitting in the dirt beside his truck, his rifle lying useless a few feet away, his whole world crumbling around him as he processed what he'd learned. His daughter would live, but the cost of that life was everything he'd believed about the monsters in the forest. And Elena, bleeding and exhausted and held up by a werewolf king who looked at her like she was precious beyond measure, wondered if Patrick would be capable of changing his beliefs or if he'd double down on his hatred and make everything worse. Only time would tell, and Juana's life hung in the balance. Chapter 6. The Wound and the Waiting. The pack descended on them the moment they crossed back into the valley. Lena was there first, her healer's bag already open, her face pale as she took in the blood soaking through Elena's shirt. What happened? I thought the bond should have warned us if it happened too fast, Daryl said, his voice tight and controlled in a way that suggested he was barely holding back fury. Patrick came home early, saw Elena leaving, shot her before any of us could intervene. Get her to the healing lodge, Lena commanded, already moving. Now. The walk to the lodge felt endless. Elena's shoulder burned with every step, and the world had started to tilt in odd directions. Blood loss, probably. Or shock, or both. Pamela appeared beside them, her ancient eyes taking in the scene with sharp assessment. The girl succeeded then. The child took the first dose. How did you? Elena started. I can smell the magic on you. Activated magic, transformed by acceptance. The medicine worked. Pamela's expression was grim, but the price was higher than we hoped. The price isn't paid yet, Daryl said darkly. Patrick Leonard owes a debt now. A debt written in his daughter's health and Elena's blood. And debts like that will be collected. They reached the healing lodge, and Lena immediately began barking orders. Kara helped Elena onto a padded table while Andy built up the fire, adding herbs that filled the space with medicinal smoke. Christopher appeared with armfuls of clean cloth and jars of salve. Everyone out except Kara, Lena said firmly. I need space to work. Daryl didn't move. I'm staying. Alpha, with respect, you're radiating enough fury to curdle milk. You'll disrupt the healing magic. Out. I said I'm staying. His voice dropped to a growl that was more wolf than human. She got shot because I asked her to do this. Because I sent her into danger to prove a point to the council. I'm not leaving her now. Lena and Daryl stared at each other for a long moment, healer and Alpha, will against will. Finally, Lena sighed. Fine. But stand in the corner, and don't interfere. And if you make this harder for her, I'll drug you myself. Fair enough. Daryl muttered, moving to the far corner but keeping his eyes locked on Elena. Lena returned her attention to Elena's shoulder, carefully cutting away the blood-soaked shirt. This is going to hurt, she warned. The bullet went through, that's good. No need to dig it out. But I need to clean the wound thoroughly before the healing magic will take hold properly. Just do it, Elena gritted out, trying not to look at the damage. She'd been shot. Actually shot. It seemed impossible, surreal, like something that happened to other people in stories rather than to her in real life. Lena poured something over the wound that burned like liquid fire. Elena bit down on a scream, her hand clenching into a fist. Immediately, she felt warmth flood through the bond. Daryl's presence, wrapping around her like a blanket, absorbing some of the pain, some of the fear. It shouldn't have been possible he was across the room, not even touching her. But pack magic didn't follow normal rules. Breathe, Lena instructed, her hands working with practiced efficiency. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Focus on the breathing, not the pain. Elena tried. It helped. A little. Between Lena's steady voice and Daryl's presence through the bond, she managed to stay conscious and relatively still while the healer worked. You're lucky, Lena said after what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. The bullet missed the bone, missed major blood vessels. You'll have a scar, but with pack healing magic accelerating your recovery, you'll be functional in a few days, fully healed in a week or two. Lucky, Elena repeated faintly. Sure. I feel incredibly lucky right now. Kara snorted from where she was organizing supplies. You survived being shot by a hunter and lived to complain about it. By pack standards, that's pretty damn lucky. Lena began applying a thick, honey-colored salve that immediately cooled the burning. This has healing herbs mixed with just a touch of pack magic. It'll help the wound close faster, prevent infection. She started wrapping clean bandages around Elena's shoulder and arm, immobilizing it. You need to rest. No strenuous activity for at least 3 days. I know you're connected to the pack bond now, and that accelerates healing. But you're still mostly human. Your body needs time to recover. 3 days, Elena said, her mind already spinning ahead to problems. But what about Juana? She needs the other 2 doses. If Pearl can't figure out how to administer them, if Patrick interferes, we'll handle it, Daryl said, finally moving from his corner to stand beside the table. His hand hovered over her uninjured shoulder, not quite touching but close enough that she could feel the heat of him. You've done your part, Elena. More than your part. Now it's our turn to ensure Juana receives her full treatment. How? Elena asked. Patrick knows about you now. He'll be watching, guarding his house. You can't just walk up to his door. No, Daryl agreed. But we can watch from a distance. Make sure Pearl administers the doses on time. And if Patrick tries to interfere, if he tries to destroy the medicine or hurt his wife or child, then we intervene. Forcefully, if necessary. The cold determination in his voice made Elena shiver. This was the Alpha King, she realized. This was the wolf who led a pack through centuries of persecution, who made hard choices to protect his people. He could be gentle with her, could show mercy and restraint. But he was also capable of terrible violence when circumstances demanded it. I don't want anyone else getting hurt, Elena said quietly. Not Pearl, not Juana, not Patrick despite being an idiot with a gun, and not any of you. Please tell me you won't start a war over this. Patrick started this, Kara said sharply. He shot you. He tried to murder someone who was helping his daughter. If there's a war, the blame lies with him, Kara, Daryl said warningly. The silver-haired warrior subsided, but her ice-chip eyes remained hard. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. The hunters have been escalating for months. This was bound to happen eventually. And now that it has, Daryl interrupted firmly. We respond with measured force. We protect Elena's investment in Juana's healing. We ensure the child receives all 3 doses. And we document everything: Patrick's violence, our restraint, the success of the treatment. Then we use that documentation to build our case for peaceful coexistence with the humans who are willing to listen. And the ones who aren't willing to listen? Andy asked from the doorway, where he'd apparently been listening the entire time. We deal with them if and when they become an immediate threat, Daryl said. But we don't escalate unnecessarily. We don't give them the war they're itching for. Because if we do, if we let our anger override our judgment, we lose the moral high ground Elena just bled to secure. Silence fell over the healing lodge. Elena could feel the tension, the barely restrained desire for retaliation, the pack's protective fury on her behalf. It was overwhelming and humbling and frightening all at once. I need everyone to leave except Daryl, Lena announced. Elena needs rest. And you're all making that impossible with your warrior posturing. Kara and Andy exchanged glances but obeyed, filing out with muttered assurances that they'd be nearby if needed. Even Pamela left, though not without giving Elena a long, searching look that seemed to see straight through her. Once the others were gone, Lena turned to Daryl. I mean it about rest. She needs sleep, quiet, and time to heal. Keep the bond calm. No flooding her with your emotions. I know you're furious about what happened, but she doesn't need to carry that weight right now. I understand, Daryl said quietly. Lena nodded, satisfied, and gathered her supplies. I'll check on her in a few hours. If the bleeding starts again, if she develops a fever, if anything seems wrong, send for me immediately. She paused at the door. She did well today, Alpha. She saved a life and planted seeds for peace, even if the cost was higher than any of us wanted. That matters. Then she was gone. And Elena was alone with Daryl in the quiet healing lodge, with nothing but the crackle of the fire and the throb of her wounded shoulder to mark the moment. "You're angry," Elena said softly. It wasn't a question. She could feel it through the bond, a banked fire of rage that he was working hard to control. "I'm furious," Daryl admitted, pulling a chair close to the table and sitting so they were at eye level. "I sent you into danger. I knew the risks but let you go anyway because we needed what you could accomplish. And you nearly died because of that choice. Because of my choice. I chose to go," Elena reminded him. "You gave me the option to refuse. I could have said no, could have walked away from the test, from the pack, from all of this. But I didn't. I chose to help Juana because it was right, not because you ordered me to. That doesn't make me less responsible for what happened." "No," Elena agreed. "But it does mean the blame isn't entirely yours to carry. Patrick made his choice when he pulled that trigger. That's on him, not you." Daryl reached out hesitantly, his fingers brushing her uninjured hand. The contact sent warmth flooding through the bond. Not the overwhelming surge from earlier, but a steady, comforting presence. "When I felt your fear spike through the bond, when I realized you were in danger. I've never run faster in my life. Never felt more desperate to reach someone. And then I saw the blood. Saw him standing there with the rifle. And I wanted..." He stopped, his jaw clenching. "I wanted to rip his throat out. Wanted to make him pay for daring to hurt you. The only thing that stopped me was your voice. Your plea not to kill him. Because killing him would have made you the monster he believes you are," Elena said gently. "And because Juana doesn't deserve to lose her father, even if he's a flawed, frightened man who makes terrible decisions." "You're too forgiving," Daryl said. But there was something like admiration in his voice, too willing to see the best in people who've shown you their worst. "Someone has to be," Elena replied. "If we all just responded to hate with more hate, to violence with more violence, the cycle would never end. Someone has to break it. Someone has to choose mercy when revenge would be easier. Like you did when you found me dying in the forest," Daryl said softly. "You chose mercy then too. It seems to be a pattern with you, Elena Mullins." "A frustrating pattern, probably," Elena said, managing a weak smile despite the pain. "A beautiful pattern," Daryl corrected, his hand tightened around hers. "You're extraordinary. You know that, right? Everything you've done, saving me, accepting the pack bond, going to the Leonards despite the danger, refusing to let me kill Patrick even after he shot you, it's all extraordinary. You're extraordinary. You're extraordinary." Heat flooded Elena's cheeks, and it had nothing to do with blood loss or fever. "I'm just trying to do the right thing. That's not extraordinary. That's just being a decent person." "Then the world needs more decent people like you," Daryl said. "Because decency like yours changes things, saves lives, builds bridges between enemies, maybe even prevents wars. Or starts them," Elena countered quietly. "Patrick knows about you now. About the pack. He'll tell Brad. And Brad will tell others. And soon everyone will know that the wolves in the forest are shifters. What happens then? Then we face whatever comes," Daryl said simply. "Together. Pack and pack friend." Alpha and he hesitated, and Elena felt something shift in the bond, something deepening, warming, becoming more than oath and obligation. "And what?" Elena whispered, her heart hammering despite the exhaustion pulling at her. "And whatever else we're becoming," Daryl finished softly. "Because this bond between us, it's more than life debt now. Elena, surely you can feel it. The way it's changing, growing, transforming into something neither of us quite expected." Elena could feel it, had been feeling it since the moment their bleeding palms touched during the bonding ceremony. Maybe even before that. In the forest when she'd first touched his wounds, when their eyes had met and something had sparked between them. "The mate bond," she said, testing the words out loud for the first time. "Potentially," Daryl agreed. "If we both want it. If we're both willing to let it develop naturally, rather than fighting against it." "And if I'm not ready?" Elena asked. "If this is all too much, too fast, too complicated, then we wait," Daryl said without hesitation. We let the bond exist at whatever level you're comfortable with. Pack friend, protected, valued, that's enough. It will always be enough, Elena. I will never pressure you into more than you can give. The sincerity in his voice, in his eyes, in the bond itself made Elena's chest ache. When had anyone ever offered her this kind of patient, unconditional acceptance? When had anyone ever made her feel like her boundaries mattered, like her comfort was more important than their desires? I don't know what I want, Elena admitted. Everything is changing so fast. A week ago, I was alone in my cottage, invisible to everyone, irrelevant. Now I'm shot and bleeding in a werewolf healing lodge, connected by magic to an entire pack, having conversations about mate bonds with a king. It's surreal. It is. Daryl agreed with a slight smile. But surreal doesn't mean wrong. Sometimes the most important changes happen fast lightning strikes that alter the landscape forever. Maybe this is one of those strikes. Or maybe it's going to burn everything down, Elena said. Maybe, Daryl conceded. But even if it does, even if this all ends in fire and ruin, I won't regret it. Because knowing you, being connected to you, seeing the world through your eyes, it's already changed me, made me better, given me hope that peace might actually be possible. Before Elena could respond, exhaustion crashed over her like a wave. The adrenaline that had been keeping her upright, keeping her functional, suddenly drained away, leaving nothing but bone-deep weariness and pain. Sleep, Daryl murmured, seeming to sense her state through the bond. I'll stay. I'll keep watch. You're safe here, Elena. I promise. Joanna, Elena mumbled, fighting to keep her eyes open. Make sure she gets the noon dose. Make sure Pearl. I'll handle it. Daryl assured her. Rest now. Everything else can wait. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to plan and strategize and solve all the problems lining up like dominoes waiting to fall. But her body had other ideas. Her eyes slipped closed, and darkness pulled her down into sleep. The last thing she felt before unconsciousness claimed her was Daryl's hand wrapped around hers, warm and solid and safe, and through the bond a wordless promise. I've got you. You're not alone. Not anymore. Elena dreamed of wolves. They ran through endless forests under moonlight, their howls rising like songs that spoke of belonging and pack and home. She ran with them not as a wolf herself, but as something in between, something that belonged despite being different. In the dream, she could understand their language, could hear the thoughts they shared through the pack mind, the concerns and joys and griefs that bound them together. And threaded through it all was a golden thread connecting her to Daryl, pulsing with emotion and meaning and possibility. This is what it could be. A voice whispered in the dream. Not Daryl's voice, not exactly, but something older. The bond itself, perhaps, showing her what full acceptance could look like. This is what we could become together, separate but connected, different but unified, building something new from old materials. Then the dream shifted. The forest burned. Flames consumed the trees, and humans with rifles emerged from the smoke, Brad at their head, Patrick beside him, others Elena recognized from town. They shot the wolves methodically, coldly, while somewhere a child screamed. Juana. It was Juana screaming. Elena tried to run toward the sound, tried to help, but her feet were rooted to the ground. She could only watch as the hunters closed in, as the pack fell one by one, as Daryl turned to face her with grief in his golden eyes. This is what happens if they won't listen, the bond voice whispered. This is what happens when mercy is mistaken for weakness, when bridges are burned before they can be crossed. Then we don't let it happen, Elena said in the dream, finding her voice, finding her strength. We fight for peace. We refuse to let hate win. We build the bridges strong enough to withstand the fire. The dream. Daryl smiled. That's my mate, he said. And the words sent warmth flooding through her. That's the one I chose. The one who refuses to surrender hope even when the world burns. Elena woke gasping, the dream still vivid in her mind. Afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows she'd slept for hours. Her shoulder throbbed with dull pain. But it was manageable. More discomfort than agony. Daryl still sat beside her, though he'd shifted his chair closer, and his head was bowed, eyes closed. Resting, not sleeping, she could feel his consciousness through the bond, alert and watchful even in repose. I dreamed about the pack, Elena said softly. His eyes opened immediately, focusing on her with that intense attention that made her feel seen. Good dreams or bad? Both, Elena admitted. First I was running with you. All of you. Understanding the pack mind. Feeling connected to something larger than myself. It was beautiful. And then? Daryl prompted when she paused. And then I dreamed about war. About the pack burning. Hunters killing everyone. Juana screaming. About everything we're trying to prevent actually happening. Daryl's expression darkened. Sometimes dreams are just fear playing out in our subconscious. And sometimes, especially for those connected to pack magic, dreams are warnings. Possibilities that might come to pass if we're not careful. That's comforting, Elena muttered. It's honest, Daryl corrected. The situation is dangerous, Elena. Patrick knows about us now. He'll tell others. Brad and his cousins will use it as justification for escalation. We're at a tipping point. Things could go either way. Toward peace or toward war. Toward understanding or toward annihilation. So what do we do? Elena asked. We make sure Juana completes her treatment. We document the success. And then we find allies, humans like Pearl, who've seen proof that we're not monsters. We build a coalition strong enough to stand against Brad's faction. It won't be easy, and it won't be quick, but it's the only path forward that doesn't end in bloodshed. And in the meantime, you heal, you rest. You let the pack take care of you the way you took care of me in that forest clearing. His hand found hers again, that now familiar spark of connection warming the space between them. We've got you, Elena. You don't have to carry this alone. Elena wanted to believe him. Wanted to trust that the pack's protection meant something, that she really had found a place to belong. But doubt whispered in the back of her mind, old fears that no amount of magic could erase overnight. What if I'm not strong enough? She asked quietly. What if I fail, and people die because I wasn't good enough, wasn't brave enough, wasn't enough? Then we fail together, Daryl said simply, and we get back up and try again. That's what pack means, Elena. We rise and fall as one. Your failures are our failures. Your successes are our successes. You're not carrying this weight alone anymore. You never have to be alone again, unless that's what you choose. Tears pricked Elena's eyes. I've been alone for so long. I don't know how to be anything else. Then we'll teach you, Daryl promised. One day at a time, one moment at a time, until being part of something larger feels as natural as breathing. A soft knock interrupted the moment. Lena entered with fresh bandages and a steaming bowl of something that smelled both medicinal and appetizing. Good. You're awake, she said briskly, though her eyes were kind. Time to change those bandages and get some food in you. Healing requires fuel, and you've been running on empty for too long. As Lena worked, chattering about the valley's gossip and upcoming pack celebrations, Elena felt something shift inside her. The fear and doubt didn't disappear entirely, they probably never would, but they were balanced now by something else. Something warm and solid and real. Hope. She'd offered mercy to a dying wolf, and gained a pack. She'd risked herself to save a child, and survived to try again. She'd been shot and lived to bleed another day. And through it all, a bond was forming between her and Daryl, between her and the pack, between the person she'd been and the person she was becoming. Outside the healing lodge, the sun descended toward evening. Somewhere in Millbrook, Pearl Leonard would be preparing Juana's dusk dose of medicine, praying it would work, hoping her husband wouldn't interfere. And in the forest, dozens of wolves watched and waited, ready to protect what mattered, ready to fight for the future Elena was trying to build. One bridge at a time. One act of mercy at a time. One impossible hope at a time. Until maybe, just maybe, two worlds could learn to exist side by side without tearing each other apart. Chapter 7. The Healing and the Reckoning. 3 days passed in a blur of pain, healing, and restless waiting. Elena remained in the healing lodge under Lena's watchful care, her shoulder slowly knitting itself back together with a speed that would have been impossible without pack magic. She slept more than she'd ever slept in her life, waking only to eat the nourishing broths and herbal teas Lena insisted on, to have her bandages changed, and to receive visitors who came in steady streams. Andy brought her books from Christopher's collection, Histories of the Pack, Stories of shifters from other territories, accounts of humans and wolves who'd managed peaceful coexistence in previous centuries. Homework, he'd said with a grin. If you're going to be our bridge builder, you need to know what you're working with. Kara came once, standing awkwardly in the doorway before finally entering and depositing a knife on the table beside Elena's bed. Better than the one I gave you before, she'd said gruffly. And lessons, once you're healed, you need to know how to defend yourself properly. Even Pamela visited, though she mostly sat in silence, watching Elena with those ancient eyes that seemed to see past flesh and bone to something deeper. You're changing, she'd said finally, before leaving. Growing into what you were always meant to be. Don't fight it, the transformation is necessary. But Daryl came every day. Multiple times a day. As if he couldn't stay away. He brought reports from the scouts watching the Leonard house, updates on Juana's condition which was improving dramatically, and his own steady, comforting presence through the bond. Pearl administered the noon dose without incident. He'd told her on day 1. Patrick was at work. Juana's color is better, her energy higher. Lena says if the pattern continues, the dusk dose should complete the healing. And Patrick? Elena had asked. What did he do when he came home? Daryl's expression had darkened. He raged. Broke things. Demanded to know where the medicine came from. What Pearl had done. But when he saw Juana sitting up in bed, laughing for the first time in months, he went silent. Sometimes reality is louder than any argument. Day 2 brought more encouraging news. Juana took the final dose at dusk yesterday, Daryl reported, settling into his usual chair beside her bed. Pearl said she glowed like a lantern magic, completing its work, sealing the healing. This morning, Juana woke up hungry, demanded breakfast, and asked when she could go outside and play. The doctors would call it a miracle. And Patrick? Elena asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. Confused. Conflicted. He's not stupid, he knows this wasn't coincidence or divine intervention. He knows it came from us. But accepting that means accepting that everything he's believed about wolves, about monsters, about the forest, all of it is wrong. That's not an easy thing for a man like Patrick Leonard. Day 3 brought the first real complication. Elena had just finished a lunch of vegetable stew when Christopher burst into the healing lodge, his usually calm expression tight with urgency. We have a problem. Brad Ritter and his cousins are organizing a hunting party. 20 men, all armed, planning to enter the forest tomorrow at dawn. They're calling it a defensive operation to eliminate the wolf threat before it can attack the town. Elena's blood went cold. Because of me. Because Patrick told them what happened. Probably. Christopher agreed. Though Brad's been looking for an excuse to escalate for months. You just gave him a convenient narrative. Wolves are getting bold, attacking humans near the forest edge, using witchcraft to corrupt good Christian families. It's fear-mongering. But it's effective. We need to evacuate, Kara said from the doorway, where she'd apparently been listening. Get the children and elders to the deep caves. Prepare the warriors for defense. If Brad brings 20 armed hunters into our territory, it's war. No, Daryl said sharply. That's exactly what he wants, an excuse to claim we're violent, dangerous, deserving of extermination. We defend if attacked, yes. But we don't prepare for war. We prepare for something else. What else is there? Kara demanded. Witnesses, Elena said suddenly, the idea crystallizing even as she spoke. We need witnesses. Humans who can testify that you're not monsters, that you're people deserving of protection. If Brad comes into the forest looking for violence and instead finds, what? A community? Families? People who don't match his narrative? You want us to just sit there and let him parade through our home? Kara's voice was incredulous. Let him see our children, our elders, our most vulnerable. I want you to show him the truth, Elena countered. Show him that you're not some mindless beasts hiding in caves. Show him that you have a civilization, a culture, lives worth protecting. Make it impossible for him to dehumanize you. And if he shoots first and asks questions, never. Andy pointed out. If he sees wolves and immediately opens fire, then we need him to see humans first, Elena said. Not wolves. People in human form, living human lives, doing human things. Make him confront the reality that you're both wolf and human. Neither fully one nor the other. Daryl was quiet for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. Through the bond, Elena could feel him turning over the idea, examining it from all angles, weighing risks against potential gains. It's dangerous, he said finally. If this goes wrong, we're exposing our most vulnerable to hostile humans armed with silver weapons. If we don't try, Elena replied, Brad gets his war. He attacks, you defend, people die on both sides, and the cycle of violence continues for another generation. This is our chance to break it, to show at least some of the humans that coexistence is possible. She's right, Christopher said quietly. I've studied the histories. Every successful peace between humans and shifters started with one side refusing to meet violence, with one side insisting on being seen rather than feared. It's risky, but it's also the only path that leads anywhere but mutual destruction. Pamela materialized in the doorway, as if summoned by the conversation. The girl speaks wisdom beyond her years, the old woman said. This is the test, Alpha. Not of strength or fighting prowess, we've proven that 100 times. This is a test of whether we can be brave enough to be vulnerable, to trust that some humans, when confronted with truth, will choose understanding over hate. Daryl's jaw clenched. Elena could feel his struggle through the bond, every protective instinct, screaming to hide the pack, to defend with tooth and claw, to meet aggression with overwhelming force. But layered beneath that was something else, hope. Fragile and tentative, but real. If we do this, he said slowly, we do it smart. The children and elders retreat to the caves anyway, non-negotiable. The warriors stay close but hidden, ready to intervene if Brad's group shows signs of violence, and we control the narrative. We show them exactly what we want them to see, nothing more. And what do we want them to see? Andy asked. Humanity, Elena said simply. Families. People going about their daily lives, cooking, working, teaching, living. Not monsters, not threats, just people who happen to be different. And you, Daryl added, his eyes locking with Elena's. We need you there. A human who chose to live among us, who was wounded defending our right to exist, who can speak to Brad's group in ways we can't. You're the bridge, Elena. This is what bridge building looks like. I'm still injured, Elena protested, though she could already feel her resolve crumbling. Lena said at least 3 more days of rest. I said 3 days for full recovery, Lena interrupted, entering with fresh bandages. But you're functional now, mobile. If you're careful and don't do anything stupid like getting shot again, you can handle a few hours of standing and talking. Though I'm going on record as saying this entire plan is medically inadvisable and tactically insane. So, you'll help prepare? Daryl asked. And Elena heard the slight smile in his voice. Of course I'll help, Lena huffed. Someone has to keep you all from getting yourselves killed through foolish idealism. And if this actually works, she trailed off, something like wonder crossing her face. If this actually works, it changes everything. Then we have until dawn tomorrow to prepare, Daryl said, standing with the decisive energy of a leader committing to a plan. Christopher, I need you to find Pearl Leonard. Tell her what's happening. See if she'll bring Juana here. A healed child is powerful testimony to our intentions. Patrick won't allow it, Christopher warned. Then ask Pearl to come alone. One mother standing up for the beings who saved her daughter's life would be powerful enough. Daryl turned to Kara. Evacuate the vulnerable to the deep caves, but make it look natural, not like we're fleeing. Morning hunting trip, foraging expedition, whatever story makes sense. I don't want Brad to arrive and think we're hiding in fear. And the warriors? Kara asked. Positioned throughout the valley, but in human form and doing ordinary tasks. Weapons close but not visible. We're a community going about our business, not an army preparing for battle. Can you make that happen? Kara's expression suggested she hated every word of this plan, but she nodded. It goes against every tactical instinct I have, but yes, I can make it happen. Andy, work with Lena to prepare the valley. Make it look welcoming. Lived in. Human enough that Brad's group can relate, but distinct enough that they understand we're different, not better, not worse, just different. Andy saluted mockingly. One welcoming yet distinctly otherworldly community, coming right up. Everyone dispersed to their tasks, leaving Elena alone with Daryl and the weight of what they were attempting. She could feel his anxiety through the bond, tight and controlled, but definitely there. "This could go very wrong," she said quietly. "It could," Daryl agreed, moving to sit beside her bed again. "Brad could ignore everything we show him and attack anyway. His men could panic at the sight of shifting and start shooting. One wrong move from either side could trigger exactly the violence we're trying to prevent. So why are we doing it? Because you're right. Because someone has to take the first step toward peace, and it might as well be us. And because," he reached out, taking her hand carefully, "I've spent decades leading this pack through survival, through endurance, through just barely hanging on while the world tried to wipe us out. But survival isn't living, Elena. It's just not dying. And I want more than that for my people. For our people. I want a future where we don't have to hide, where pack children can grow up without fear, where bridges actually get built instead of burned." "That's a beautiful dream," Elena said softly. "It's your dream," Daryl corrected. "You're the one who showed it to me, who made me believe it might actually be possible. So if this is foolish idealism, at least we're being foolish together." Elena squeezed his hand, ignoring the twinge in her injured shoulder. "Together sounds good." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the bond humming between them no longer just obligation or magic, but something warm and chosen and real. "Daryl?" Elena asked hesitantly. "What you said in the dream about me being your mate, did you mean it? Or was that just dream logic?" He went very still. "What dream?" "I had a dream while I was healing. About running with the pack. About being connected to everyone. And you were there, and you called me." She stopped, suddenly embarrassed. "Never mind. It was just a dream. The pack mind sometimes manifests in dreams," Daryl said carefully. "Especially for those newly bonded. What we think and feel can bleed through, become part of each other's subconscious. So, if Dreamy said something..." He trailed off, looking almost uncertain for the first time since Elena had met him. "What exactly did I say?" "You called me your mate," Elena admitted, heat flooding her cheeks. "You said, that's the one I chose. And it felt right. In the dream. But I don't know if that was just my subconscious creating what I wanted to hear. Or if it was actually you, somehow, reaching through the bond." "Both, probably," Daryl said softly. "Because I do think of you that way, Elena. Have since the moment I understood what you'd done for me, what you risked, what you chose. The mate bond is forming whether we're ready for it or not. The only question is whether we're going to fight it or let it develop naturally." "And which do you want?" Elena asked. "I want you to choose freely," Daryl said. "No pressure, no obligation beyond what you've already accepted with the pack bond. If you want to let this deepen into a mate bond, if you want to be tied to me that permanently, that completely, I would be honored, grateful, more than you can possibly know. But if you're not ready, if you need time or space or distance..." "I don't want distance," Elena interrupted. I think I want to see where this goes. To let the bond deepen if it's going to deepen. To stop fighting what's happening between us, and just let it be." The relief and joy that flooded through the bond from Daryl's side was overwhelming, pure and unguarded, and so intense that Elena gasped. "Sorry," he said immediately, reining in his emotions. "I'm still learning to control what I send through. That was honest," Elena finished, smiling despite everything. "That was honest, and I liked it. I liked knowing exactly what you're feeling, instead of having to guess or worry that I'm misreading signals." "Then you should know," Daryl said, leaning closer, his voice dropping to something intimate and intense. "That what I'm feeling right now is gratitude that you're alive, hope that tomorrow goes well, terror that you'll get hurt again," and he hesitated, then pushed forward, "and something that feels a lot like love, even though it's too soon for that word, too fast for that kind of declaration. But it's there, growing, becoming more real every moment I spend with you." Elena's breath caught. No one had ever said anything like that to her. No one had ever looked at her the way Daryl was looking at her now, like she was precious and powerful and exactly what he'd been waiting for. "I don't know if what I feel is love yet," Elena said honestly. "But it's something. Something strong and real and frightening in the best way. And I want to find out what it becomes. If we're both brave enough to let it, then we'll be brave, Daryl promised. Together. Through whatever comes tomorrow. And all the tomorrows after. He leaned in slowly, giving Elena every opportunity to pull away. But she didn't. She met him halfway. And when their lips touched, the bond sang. It wasn't Elena's first kiss. There'd been an awkward encounter with a boy from town when she was 16, clumsy and forgettable. But this was different. This was connection, and belonging and possibility all wrapped in the simple press of mouth against mouth. Magic sparked where they touched, literal sparks, visible even through Elena's closed eyes. The bond deepened, strengthened, became something that would take deliberate effort to break rather than something that could fade through neglect. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard, and Elena could feel Daryl's heart racing through the bond as fast as her own. Well, Elena managed. That was significant, Daryl finished, his eyes glowing faintly gold. That was the bond accepting our choice. Acknowledging what's forming between us. We're not fully mated yet. That requires a formal ceremony, vows, the pack's witness, but we're committed now. Connected in ways that can't easily be undone. Do you regret it? Elena asked, suddenly uncertain. Not even slightly, Daryl said immediately. Do you? No, Elena whispered. No, I don't regret it at all. They sat together in the quiet healing lodge, hands linked, bond humming between them, both acutely aware that tomorrow could change everything for better or for catastrophically worse. But at least they'd face it together. At least neither of them would be alone. Dawn broke over the valley with deceptive peace. Elena stood in the central clearing, her injured shoulder bound tightly beneath her shirt, Kara's knife hidden in her boot, watching as the pack transformed the space into something simultaneously ordinary and extraordinary. Cooking fires had been built, with wolves in human form preparing breakfast, nothing elaborate, just simple food that showed they ate, lived, existed as a community. Children who'd been deemed old enough to stay played near the river, under watchful adult supervision, their laughter carrying across the valley. Adults worked at various tasks, repairing tools, tending the small gardens, weaving baskets from river reeds. It looked domestic, normal, utterly non-threatening, and positioned throughout the valley, invisible to untrained eyes, were warriors ready to defend if Brad's hunting party attacked. Pearl's here, Christopher announced, appearing beside Elena. She came alone. Patrick doesn't know he left for work early, probably to avoid dealing with the cognitive dissonance of his daughter's miraculous healing. And Juana? Elena asked. Home with a neighbor. Pearl didn't want to risk bringing her into potential danger, but she's willing to testify about what we did, how we saved her daughter when human medicine had given up. Where is she? With Daryl, near the lodge. He's explaining what's about to happen, making sure she understands the risks of being here. Elena nodded, her stomach churning with anxiety. Through the bond, she could feel Daryl's careful control. He was projecting calm for the pack's sake, but underneath was the same fear Elena felt. This could go so wrong in so many ways. Scouts report Brad's group entering the forest, Kara announced, materializing from the tree line. 23 men, all armed. Brad's leading. Patrick is with them, along with the usual suspects from the hunting families. They're making no effort at stealth. They want us to know they're coming. Good, Daryl said, joining them with Pearl at his side. The woman looked terrified but determined, her hands clenched into fists. Let them come loud. Let them see we're not hiding. Not cowering. Everyone, take your positions. Remember human form unless absolutely necessary. We're a community, not a threat. If they attack first, defend yourselves but don't escalate. Our goal is to survive this with as few casualties on either side as possible. The pack moved into position with practiced efficiency. Within minutes, the valley looked exactly as it had before: domestic, peaceful, ordinary. Only someone who knew what to look for would notice the tension in every posture, the readiness in every movement. Elena positioned herself near the valley entrance with Daryl, Pearl, and Kara. They would be the first thing Brad's group saw when they emerged from the forest. If this goes wrong, Pearl whispered. If Patrick tries to shoot you again, then we adapt, Elena assured her, though her own certainty was far from absolute. Thank you for being here. For being brave enough to stand with us. You saved my daughter's life, Pearl said simply. This is the least I can do. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the trees, heavy, numerous, making no attempt at concealment. Then Brad Ritter emerged from the forest, rifle raised, his face twisted with anticipation and hate. Behind him came the rest of his hunting party, spreading out in a loose formation, weapons ready, eyes scanning for threats. And at the back, looking sick but determined, was Patrick Leonard. Brad's eyes widened when he saw the valley, not a den of monsters, but a community, not savage beasts, but people in human form going about ordinary tasks. His rifle wavered, confusion crossing his face. Then he saw Elena, and his expression hardened. There, he said, pointing. The traitor. The one who's been helping these monsters. She's proof they can corrupt humans, turn them against their own kind. I'm not corrupted, Elena said clearly, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent valley. I'm someone who learned the truth about the beings living in this forest. And I'm here to tell you that everything you believe about them is wrong. They're werewolves, Brad spat. Shapeshifters. Monsters who kill our livestock, threaten our families. We've killed 3 sheep in the past 2 years, Daryl interrupted, his voice calm but commanding. And only because they'd wandered into our territory and we were hungry. We don't hunt humans. We don't threaten your families. We just want to live in peace on land that was ours long before your town was built. Lies. Brad raised his rifle higher. You attacked Patrick. Elena has a bullet wound to prove it. Patrick shot me, Elena corrected sharply. I went to his house to deliver medicine that saved his daughter's life, and he shot me for offering help. Look at him, Brad. Ask him what happened. Ask him how Juana went from dying to healthy in 3 days. Ask him where that miracle came from. All eyes turned to Patrick. The man looked like he wanted to disappear into the ground, his face cycling through shame, defiance, and confusion. Is it true? Asked one of the other hunters, a middle-aged man Elena vaguely recognized from town. Did these people save your daughter? They used magic, Patrick said weakly. Dark magic, witchcraft. They used medicine, Pearl interrupted, stepping forward despite her obvious fear. Medicine that worked when everything the doctors tried failed. They saved Juana when human science had given up, and they asked for nothing in return. No payment, no favors, no debt. They just helped. Because helping was right. Pearl, what are you doing here? Patrick's voice was strained. You shouldn't be. This isn't safe. I'm here because someone needs to tell the truth, Pearl said firmly. Someone needs to stand up and say that we were wrong about these people. That they're not monsters. That they deserve the same chance at life and safety that we want for ourselves. They're not people, Brad shouted. They're animals that can wear human skin. That's not the same thing. Then what am I? Daryl asked quietly, shifting. One moment, a man. The next, a massive wolf with golden eyes that held undeniable intelligence, undeniable humanity. Several hunters gasped, rifles jerking up. Hold your fire. Elena stepped between Daryl and the hunters, her heart hammering but her voice steady. Look at him. Really look. He's both wolf and man. Neither fully one nor the other. Does that make him less deserving of life? Less worthy of peace? Or does it just make him different from you? Daryl shifted back, standing naked and unashamed in the morning light, every scar from his encounter with Patrick's silver bullets visible. We are born this way, he said. We didn't choose to be shifters any more than you chose to be human. We just are. And all we want is the same thing anyone wants: a safe place to raise our children. Enough food to eat. And the freedom to exist without fear of being hunted and killed for being different. It's not natural, one of Brad's cousins muttered, but his rifle had lowered slightly. Neither is flying in airplanes or talking on telephones or half the things humans do every day, Andy called from where he stood near one of the cooking fires. Nature changes, evolves, becomes more complex. We're just one branch of that complexity. Brad's face was red with fury. This is a trick. Some kind of deception to make us lower our guard so they can attack. If we wanted to attack, Kara interrupted coldly, you'd already be dead. You came into our territory with weapons and hostile intent. We could have killed you the moment you entered the forest. Instead, we invited you to see the truth, to understand what you're actually threatening with your hatred and fear. Show them, Pamela said, emerging from the lodge with several children clinging to her skirts, young ones, some in human form, some in wolf form, all looking up at the hunters with wide, fearful eyes. Show them what you're really fighting for, Brad Ritter. Are you brave enough to look these children in the eyes and explain why they deserve to die for being born different? The children stared at the hunting party with expressions of pure innocence, no aggression, no threat, just children being children. One of them, a little girl with dark curls who couldn't have been more than 5, waved shyly at the hunters. Several men lowered their rifles entirely. One, a younger hunter Elena didn't recognize, looked actively sick. "This isn't," they said. The young hunter stammered. "Brad, you said they were monsters. These are just kids." "They'll grow into monsters," Brad insisted. But his voice had lost its certainty. "They'll become threats eventually." "And you'll become what?" Elena challenged. "You'll become a child killer? A murderer of innocents who've done nothing wrong except exist? Is that really who you want to be?" Silence stretched across the valley, tense and fragile. This was the moment, Elena realized, the pivot point where everything could tilt toward peace or disaster. Patrick Leonard broke it. "I can't do this," he said, lowering his rifle completely. "I can't. Juana is alive because of them. She's healthy and happy and asking when she can go play in the forest. How do I reconcile that with what we came here to do? How do I justify killing the beings who saved my daughter's life?" "They're manipulating you," Brad shouted, "using your gratitude against you. They saved my child." Patrick roared back, and Elena had never heard so much emotion in his voice. "They saved her when I shot the woman who brought the medicine, when I chose hate over hope, pride over my daughter's life. And they still healed her, still gave her the cure, still offered mercy when I deserved none. So tell me, Brad, who are the real monsters here?" More rifles lowered, the hunting party fractured before Elena's eyes, some men still gripping their weapons, faces hard, but others looking uncertain, questioning, reconsidering. "We can't let them live," Brad said, but it came out desperate rather than commanding. "If word gets out about this place, about what they are, then word gets out," Elena interrupted. "Then people have to decide what matters more, fear of what's different, or hope for what's possible. Then humanity has to choose whether we're capable of coexisting with beings who aren't exactly like us, or whether we're just going to keep killing anything that challenges our narrow definition of normal." "Easy words from a traitor," Brad spat. "I'm not a traitor," Elena said quietly. "I'm just someone who learned that monsters aren't defined by how many legs they have or what shape they take. Monsters are defined by their choices, by whether they choose cruelty or compassion, hate or understanding, violence or peace. And by that definition, Brad, you're far more monstrous than anyone in this valley." Brad's face went purple with rage. His rifle swung toward Elena, finger tightening on the trigger. And Patrick Leonard stepped between them. "No," Patrick said simply, his own rifle aimed at Brad now. "I've made enough terrible choices, shot enough innocent people. I won't stand by and watch you kill someone who's shown more courage and mercy than any of us deserve. The hunt ends here, Brad. It ends now." For one terrible moment, Elena thought Brad might shoot Patrick, thought he might be so consumed by hate that he'd kill his own ally rather than admit he was wrong. Then, slowly, Brad lowered his rifle. "This isn't over," he said, his voice shaking with suppressed fury. "You think this changes anything? You think showing me a few cute kids and some sob stories makes up for what they are? I'll be back, with more men, more weapons, and next time I won't be so easily fooled by—" "Next time," Daryl interrupted, his voice carrying absolute authority. "I'll file a formal complaint with the State Wildlife Commission. I'll provide documentation of shifter populations in this territory, our legal right to exist here, and evidence of unprovoked attacks by human hunters. I'll demand federal protection under endangered species laws, and make this valley officially off-limits to hunting of any kind. And if you violate those protections, if you come back here with violence in mind, you'll face legal consequences. Prison time, real penalties for real crimes." Brad stared at him, clearly not having expected that response. "You can't, shifters aren't protected. We are in 4 states already," Christopher said, stepping forward with documents in hand. "Legislation is pending in 6 more. The times are changing, Brad. Slowly, yes, but changing. And you can either adapt to that change, or you can be left behind, isolated and bitter while the rest of the world moves toward coexistence. Elena could practically see Brad's mind working, trying to find another angle, another argument, but he'd lost. Not through violence or force, but through truth and witnesses, and the simple power of people seeing past their fear to reality. "Let's go," Brad finally said to his remaining allies, about half the original group, Elena noted. The others had already started drifting back toward the forest, rifles lowered, faces troubled but thoughtful. As Brad and his reduced hunting party retreated, Patrick lingered. He looked at Elena, at Daryl, at the pack members watching warily from throughout the valley. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, "for shooting you, for believing the worst instead of looking for the truth, for almost," his voice broke, "for almost choosing hate over my daughter's life. I don't know if I can change years of belief overnight, but I can try. I can start. That's all anyone can ask," Elena said gently. "Start trying. Start seeing. Start choosing understanding over fear. The rest will come." Patrick nodded, then turned, and followed the others into the forest. When the last hunter had disappeared from view, the valley erupted. Children came running from their hiding spots, laughing and crying with relief. Adults embraced, some celebrating, some just shaking with the aftermath of adrenaline and terror. Someone started singing an old pack song about survival and hope, and others joined in until the valley rang with voices. Elena's legs gave out. She would have collapsed if Daryl hadn't been there to catch her, his arms wrapping around her as the weight of what they'd just accomplished finally hit. "We did it," she whispered against his chest. "We actually did it." "You did it," Daryl corrected. "You built the bridge. You showed them the truth. You turned potential massacre into the beginning of peace." "Patrick turned it," Elena argued. "He was the one who chose differently in the moment that mattered." "Because you gave him the option to choose," Daryl insisted. "Because you saved his daughter and showed him mercy when he deserved none. You planted the seed, Elena. Everything that grows from it is because of you." Elena looked up at him, seeing the pride and wonder, and something deeper in his golden eyes. Through the bond, she felt what he wasn't saying out loud, that she'd changed him, changed the pack, changed the possible future, in ways that terrified and exhilarated him in equal measure. "I love you," she said suddenly, the words spilling out before she could think better of them. "I know it's too soon. I know we barely know each other. But I love you. I love your people. I love this place and what it represents, and the hope that maybe, just maybe, the world can be better than we thought." Daryl smiled, genuinely smiled, bright and unguarded. "I love you too," he said simply. "And you're right, it is too soon. We don't know everything about each other yet, and we're probably both idiots for feeling this way this fast. But I don't care. I love you, Elena Mullins, my bridge builder, my mate, my hope for a better future." He kissed her then, in front of the whole pack, with magic crackling around them and the bond singing with joy. And in that moment, with the threat averted and love declared and possibility stretching out before them like an unwritten story, Elena finally understood what her grandmother had meant all those years ago. Kindness was its own reward, yes. But sometimes, just sometimes, it was also the foundation for everything else. For love and belonging and the courage to build bridges instead of walls. For choosing hope when fear would be easier. For believing that even the most broken world could be healed, one impossible mercy at a time. Chapter 8. The Cost of Peace. 3 weeks. That's how long the fragile peace lasted before everything shattered. Elena stood at the edge of the valley, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of blood and gold, and tried to ignore the knot of dread tightening in her stomach. Through the bond, she could feel Daryl's tension. He was in a council meeting, discussing the reports that had been trickling in all week. Brad Ritter hadn't given up. He'd just gotten smarter. "You're brooding again," Andy said, appearing beside her with his usual easy grace. "Daryl's going to feel that through the bond and worry." "Good," Elena said. "He should worry. We all should. Brad's been quiet for 3 weeks. That's not surrender. That's planning." Andy's expression sobered. "Christopher's sources say he's been traveling, visiting other towns, other hunting families, spreading stories about the werewolf infestation in Millbrook, recruiting allies from outside our territory." "How many allies?" "Enough." Andy's jaw clenched. Enough to be a real problem if they coordinate an attack. We're talking 50, maybe 60 armed hunters, all with silver weapons. All convinced we're existential threats to humanity. Elena's heart sank. We can't fight that many, not without casualties on both sides, Andy finished grimly, which is exactly what Brad wants. He gets to play martyr if we kill his people, and we lose everything we've built if we massacre humans who are just scared and misinformed. There has to be another way, Elena insisted, though she could hear the desperation in her own voice. We showed them the truth. Patrick changed his mind. Others did too. Why isn't that enough? Because fear is louder than truth, Pamela said, emerging from the tree line with her usual uncanny timing. Because Brad Ritter is a man who defines himself by his enemies, and without us to hate, he's just another small, angry person screaming into the void. He needs this fight, Elena. Needs it more than he needs to live. Then he's going to get people killed, Elena said. His people. Our people. Innocents who just got caught in the crossfire. Yes, Pamela agreed simply. That's what war is. That's what happens when bridges aren't strong enough to bear the weight of hate pressing down on them. The council meeting broke up, and Daryl emerged from the lodge with Kara, Christopher, and several other senior pack members. His face was grim, and through the bond, Elena felt the decision he'd already made. The one he hated but saw no alternative to. We're evacuating, he announced without preamble. The children, the elders, anyone who can't or won't fight. Christopher has identified 3 possible locations in the deep wilderness territories, unclaimed by any pack. Far enough from human settlements that we won't be found easily. You're running, Elena said, disbelief coloring her voice. After everything we did, everything we proved, you're just giving up. I'm keeping my people alive, Daryl corrected, his voice hard. That's my first responsibility as Alpha. Not pride, not territory, not even justice. Just survival. If Brad brings 60 hunters with silver weapons into this valley, we can't win without catastrophic losses. So we don't fight. We disappear. We find somewhere else to exist. And let him win? Elena demanded. Let him drive you from your home, from land that's been yours for centuries. Let him tell everyone that he successfully cleansed the forest of monsters. Better that than watching my people die, Daryl said quietly, but Elena heard the pain underneath. This was killing him every word, every decision, every compromise with the reality that sometimes courage wasn't enough. There's another option, Elena said suddenly, the idea crystallizing even as terror flooded through her. Let me go back. Every wolf in the clearing went still. Absolutely not, Daryl said, his voice dropping to a growl. Elena, no. Hear me out. Elena interrupted, her words coming faster now. Brad's whole narrative depends on painting you as irredeemable monsters. But what if I go back to Millbrook, hold a town meeting, tell everyone what I've seen here? Tell them about the children, the families, the community you've built. Tell them about Juana's healing and Patrick's change of heart. Give people a chance to choose understanding over Brad's fear-mongering. They'll call you corrupted, Kara said flatly. They'll say you've been enchanted, turned into a thrall, brainwashed by wolf magic. Brad will use you as proof that we're dangerous. Maybe, Elena agreed. Or maybe enough people will listen. Maybe enough people are tired of Brad's crusade. Tired of living in fear. Ready for a different story. We won't know unless we try. And if it goes wrong? Daryl asked, moving closer, his hands cupping her face with desperate gentleness. If Brad uses your testimony as an excuse to attack you, to hurt you in front of the whole town as an example of what happens to traitors, I would feel it through the bond, Elena. I would feel every moment of your pain, your fear, and I wouldn't be able to reach you in time to stop it. Then you'd feel me being brave, Elena said, pressing her hand over his heart. You'd feel me fighting for us, for the future we want to build. And maybe that would be enough. Maybe my courage could inspire others to find theirs. Or you'd die, Daryl said bluntly, and I'd have to live with knowing I let you walk into danger I could have prevented. You can't prevent everything, Elena said gently. You can't protect everyone all the time, Daryl. Sometimes the cost of peace is risk. Sometimes the price of change is vulnerability. And I'm willing to pay that price if it means your people don't have to abandon their home. Through the bond, she felt his anguish, the Alpha's impossible choice between protecting one person he loved and protecting hundreds who depended on him. She felt his fury at being put in this position, his grief at what might happen, his desperate desire to find any solution that didn't require sacrifice. "I'll go with her," Pearl said. Everyone turned to find Pearl Leonard standing at the valley entrance, Juana holding her hand. Behind them stood Patrick, looking uncomfortable but determined. "We came to warn you," Pearl continued. Patrick heard Brad's plans. He's calling a town meeting tomorrow night, planning to present evidence of the wolf threat, demand action from the mayor and sheriff. "But if Elena speaks first, if we testify about what really happened with Juana," she looked at her daughter, who smiled up at her mother with absolute trust. "If we show them that the wolves are healers, not monsters, maybe we can turn the tide." "Patrick," Elena asked carefully, "you'd stand with us publicly, against Brad?" Patrick looked physically ill, but he nodded. "I've spent 3 weeks watching my daughter laugh and play and live because of you. Because of them. I won't stand by and let Brad destroy that. Even if it costs me friends, reputation, everything. Some debts can only be paid in truth." Daryl looked at Elena, at Pearl and Patrick, at his gathered pack. She could feel him weighing options, calculating risks, trying to find the path that led somewhere other than disaster. "If we do this," he said finally, "we do it smart. Elena doesn't go alone. Kara and Andy accompany her in human form, positioned to extract her if things go violent. Christopher activates every friendly contact he has in town. People who owe us favors. People who might speak up in support. And the very moment I feel through the bond that Elena is in immediate danger, I'm coming. Full pack, full force, consequences be damned." "That could start the war we're trying to prevent," Kara pointed out. "Then we prevent the war by succeeding," Daryl said. "By convincing enough humans that coexistence is possible, that we're worth the risk of standing up to Brad's hate. It's a gamble, a terrible, terrifying gamble with Elena's life as the stakes. But it's the only path I see that doesn't end in mass casualties or permanent exile." He turned back to Elena, his golden eyes searching hers. "Are you absolutely certain? Once you walk into that town meeting, once you stand up in front of everyone and declare yourself pack friend, there's no taking it back. You'll be marked. Target. Potentially for the rest of your life." "I've been marked since the day I saved you," Elena said simply. "Since the moment I chose mercy over fear. This is just making it official. And honestly," she smiled despite everything, "I'd rather die standing up for what's right than live safely while people I love are driven from their home. So yes, I'm certain." Daryl pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her with desperate strength. Through the bond, she felt everything he couldn't say, the terror and pride and love and fury all tangled together. "If anything happens to you," he whispered against her hair, "if Brad or anyone else hurts you, there won't be peace anymore. Elena. There will only be vengeance. And I won't stop until everyone responsible pays. Then I guess I'd better make sure nothing happens to me," Elena said, trying to inject lightness into her voice despite the fear churning in her stomach. Tomorrow night. A town meeting. Her chance to speak truth to fear, to build bridges strong enough to withstand the weight of Brad's hatred. Her chance to save the pack she'd come to love. Or her chance to die trying. The sun finished setting, plunging the valley into twilight. And Elena Mullins, bridge builder and mate-to-be, began preparing for the most important speech of her life. One that would either change everything, or end everything. The cost of peace, she was learning, was never cheap. But some prices were worth paying, even if the currency was blood. Chapter 9. The Town That Chose. The Millbrook Community Center hadn't been this packed since the fire of '09. Elena stood in the back room, a cramped storage space that smelled of old coffee and desperation, listening to the rumble of voices beyond the door. Hundreds of people, all gathered because Brad Ritter had promised them answers, solutions, protection from the wolf menace threatening their town. He had no idea she was here, no idea that his carefully orchestrated fear rally was about to become something else entirely. "You don't have to do this," Kara said for the third time, positioned by the door in jeans and a leather jacket that hid multiple weapons. "We can still extract you. Get you out before Brad even knows you're here. And let him control the narrative? Let him tell everyone I'm a corrupted thrall hiding in the forest with monsters? Elena shook her head. No. This ends tonight, one way or another. Andy paced the small room like a caged animal, his usual easy demeanor replaced by tense readiness. Christopher's people are in the crowd. Pearl and Patrick are sitting front row with Juana. The mayor is here, the sheriff, the pastor, everyone who matters. If we're going to sway public opinion, this is our chance. And if we don't sway them? Elena asked quietly. Then we run very fast, Andy said grimly. And hope Daryl gets here before the mob catches us. Through the bond, Elena felt Daryl's presence. He was close, hidden in the forest just beyond town limits, with 24 warriors, ready to intervene the moment she needed him. The connection thrummed with his anxiety, his barely controlled fury at letting her walk into danger, his absolute certainty that he would burn the entire town down if they hurt her. I'm okay. She sent through the bond, still marveling at the mental communication that had developed over the past 3 weeks. Scared, but okay. Be brave. Daryl's voice echoed in her mind. Be brilliant. Be the bridge we need. And if anyone threatens you, you'll know. Elena finished. And you'll come. I know. I trust you. His love flooded through the bond, warm and fierce, and absolutely unwavering. Then he muted the connection slightly, giving her space to focus on what came next. The rumble of voices beyond the door grew louder. Brad had started speaking. Cannot ignore the threat any longer. His voice carried through the thin walls. 3 weeks ago, we confirmed what we've suspected for years. The wolves in our forest aren't just animals. They're shapeshifters, werewolves, monsters that can take human form, infiltrate our communities, corrupt our people. Murmurs of agreement. Gasps of shock from those hearing it for the first time. I have testimony, Brad continued, his voice taking on a practiced rhythm. Evidence from Patrick Leonard himself. His own words describing how these creatures used dark magic on his daughter, how they've been watching our town, studying us, preparing for... That's not what I said. Patrick's voice cut through Brad's speech like a knife. Elena heard the scrape of a chair, Patrick standing up. That's not what I said at all, Brad. And you know it. Silence. Shocked. Absolute silence. Patrick, Brad said. And even through the door, Elena could hear the warning in his tone. Sit down. You're not thinking clearly. The wolf magic has confused you. The only thing confusing me was years of listening to your fear-mongering, Patrick interrupted. You want to talk about my daughter? Fine. Let's talk about Juana. 3 weeks ago, she was dying. Aplastic anemia. The doctors gave her months, maybe weeks. They'd tried everything, transfusions, drugs, experimental treatments. Nothing worked. She was dying, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Elena heard the catch in his voice, the grief of a father who'd faced losing his child. Then Elena Mullins came to my house, Patrick continued. Brought medicine from the wolves. Medicine that saved Juana's life. Not treated her symptoms, saved her life. In 3 days she went from barely able to sit up to running and playing like a normal 10-year-old. That's not dark magic, Brad. That's healing. That's mercy. That's the kind of miracle I spent years praying for. Delivered by the beings you want us to hunt and kill. They're manipulating you, Brad shouted. Using your gratitude to cloud your judgment. Then I'm grateful to be manipulated, Patrick said flatly. Because my daughter is alive. And if that makes me a traitor to your crusade, Brad, then I'm a traitor. But at least I'm a traitor whose child will grow up. Can you say the same about the families you're trying to drag into a war? The crowd erupted, some voices supporting Patrick, others shouting him down, chaos spreading through the community center like wildfire. This was her moment. Elena pushed through the door before she could lose her nerve. The community center fell silent as she walked down the center aisle. Every eye fixed on her, some shocked, some hostile, some cautiously hopeful. She could feel the weight of their attention, their judgment, their fear. Brad's face went purple with rage. You. Security. Remove this woman, she's trespassing, corrupted by. I'm a citizen of Millbrook, Elena said clearly, her voice carrying despite its tremor. Born here, raised here, lived here my entire life until 3 weeks ago. I have as much right to speak at this meeting as anyone. More right than you, Brad. since I'm the only person in this room who actually knows what's happening in that forest. Then tell them, Brad snarled. Tell them how the monsters brainwashed you, turned you into their puppet. I'll tell them the truth, Elena interrupted, climbing onto the small stage at the front of the room. Her shoulder ached, the bullet wound from Patrick's rifle still healing, but she stood straight, proud, unafraid. 3 weeks ago, I saved a dying wolf, she began. Found him bleeding in the forest, shot with silver bullets by hunters from this town. I could have left him to die. Should have, probably, if I'd had any sense of self-preservation. But I couldn't. Because even dying, even terrifying, he was a living being in pain. And I was raised to believe that mercy matters more than fear. She scanned the crowd, meeting eyes, refusing to look away. That wolf was Daryl Brooks, alpha of the Northern Pack, king of the forest territories. And when he healed, when he showed me what he truly was, I had a choice. I could run back here, spread fear about shapeshifters in the woods, or I could stay, learn, see the truth that Brad Ritter doesn't want any of you to know. What truth? Someone called from the crowd, a woman Elena vaguely recognized from the grocery store. That they're people, Elena said simply. Not animals, not monsters. People who happen to be able to shift between human and wolf form. People with families, homes, communities. People who've lived in that forest for centuries, long before Millbrook existed, just trying to survive while being hunted by humans who fear what they don't understand. They killed our livestock, someone shouted. 3 sheep in 2 years, Elena countered. 3 sheep that wandered into their territory when they were hungry. Compare that to how many wolves you've killed, Brad. How many of their scouts, their young, their innocent, have died from your silver bullets and your traps? Brad's face twisted. They're not innocent. They're predators. So are we, Elena said quietly. We hunt. We eat meat. We defend our territory from threats. The only difference is that we do it on 2 legs instead of 4. That doesn't make us superior, Brad. Just different. She turned to address the whole crowd now, channeling every ounce of conviction she possessed. I've lived among them for 3 weeks. Eaten their food, learned their customs, met their children. I've seen young wolves learning to read, healers tending gardens, warriors training to defend their families from threats like the hunting party Brad led into their valley 2 weeks ago. Gasps. Murmurs. Brad had clearly not shared that detail. You attacked them? The mayor asked, his voice sharp. Brad, you told the council you were conducting reconnaissance. I was defending this town, Brad shouted. Protecting us from what? Elena challenged. From people who offered to heal a dying child? From a community that showed us mercy when they could have killed us all the moment we entered their territory? 23 men, Brad. You led 23 armed hunters into a valley filled with shifters who could have torn you apart in seconds. And what did they do? Silence. Brad's jaw worked soundlessly. They invited us to breakfast. Elena finished. They showed us their homes, their families, their lives. They proved they weren't monsters. And the only reason anyone got hurt that day was because Patrick shot me when I tried to save his daughter's life. She pulled down her collar, showing the still healing scar on her shoulder. This is what choosing peace looks like. This is what building bridges costs. And I'd do it again. 1,000 times. Because the alternative the war Brad wants so desperately will cost us so much more than 1 bullet wound. They're not human, Brad roared, losing all pretense of control. They're abominations. Violations of natural law. And if we don't eliminate them now, they'll spread. They'll infect our children, corrupt our families, destroy everything we've built. Everything you've built on stolen land, Elena said quietly. This forest was theirs first, Brad. We're the invaders. We're the ones who pushed them out, hunted them, forced them into hiding. And despite all that, despite having every reason to hate us, they still offered healing to Juana Leonard. Still chose mercy over revenge. That's not corruption, that's grace. And it's more than we've ever offered them. Pearl stood, pulling Juana up with her. The little girl looked healthier than Elena had ever seen, her bright eyes, pink cheeks, boundless energy barely contained. My daughter was dying, Pearl said, her voice shaking but clear. The doctors gave up. Our prayers seemed unanswered. And then Elena brought medicine from the wolves. Medicine that worked. That saved Juana when human science failed. How do I reconcile that with Brad's stories about monsters? How do I call them evil when they gave me back my child? Me too, said a voice from the back. An elderly man stood. Samuel Green, Elena realized. The town's oldest resident. 30 years ago, Samuel continued. I got lost in those woods. Broke my leg, couldn't walk, thought I'd die out there. A wolf found me. A massive gray wolf that I now realize must have been a shifter. Could have killed me easy. Instead, he guarded me through the night, kept the cold off me, scared away other predators. When the search party found me at dawn, that wolf disappeared back into the forest. Never knew what it was until now. But I owe my life to one of these monsters Brad wants us to kill. They helped my grandmother, another voice called, when she had pneumonia and couldn't afford the hospital. Someone left herbs at our door, herbs that saved her life. We never knew who. I'm starting to think I do now. More voices. More stories. A pattern emerging, decades of quiet help, secret mercy. The pack watching over Millbrook even while being hunted by it. Brad looked wildly around the room, seeing his narrative crumbling. You're all being deceived. This is exactly what they want, to make you sympathetic, make you weak, so when they attack. When have they attacked? The sheriff interrupted. Brad, I've been reviewing incident reports going back 20 years. 3 livestock deaths. 0 unprovoked attacks on humans. Compare that to 15 wolf corpses found with silver bullets. 8 more caught in illegal traps. If anyone's been doing the attacking, it's us. We were defending ourselves. Brad insisted desperately. From what? Elena asked. From people who want the same things we do. Safety for their children. Food on their tables. The freedom to exist without constantly looking over their shoulders for hunters. Those aren't the goals of monsters, Brad. Those are the goals of anyone trying to survive in a world that hates them for being different. She took a deep breath, preparing for the final push. I'm asking this town to make a choice. We can follow Brad down the path of violence and fear. We can hunt the pack, drive them from their home, maybe even succeed in killing them all. And then what? We'll be the people who committed genocide against sentient beings whose only crime was being born different. We'll be the monsters. Or, she continued, her voice strengthening, we can choose differently. We can recognize that the forest is big enough for both species. We can establish boundaries, rules, communication. We can build something new, not perfect, not without challenges, but better than endless war. We can be the generation that chose understanding over hate. And if they betray that trust? Someone called out genuine question, not hostility. Then we deal with it. Elena said honestly. With laws, consequences, justice, not genocide. The same way we deal with humans who break the peace. Because once we recognize them as people, they deserve the same rights and responsibilities as anyone else. No special treatment, no free passes. Just equality, just a chance to coexist. The room fell silent. Elena could feel the balance tipping the crowd, weighing her words against Brad's fear, measuring hope against hate, deciding which future they wanted to claim. The mayor stood. I move that we establish a formal committee to negotiate terms of coexistence with the Northern Pack. Representatives from the town, representatives from the pack, neutral mediators from the State Wildlife Commission. If these beings are truly sentient, truly capable of communication and cooperation, then we owe it to ourselves and to them to try peace before resorting to violence. Seconded, the sheriff said immediately. All in favor? Hands rose, dozens of them. Not everyone. Brad and his closest supporters sat with arms crossed, faces twisted with fury. But enough. More than enough. Motion carries, the mayor announced. Brad, your hunting licenses are hereby revoked pending the outcome of negotiations. If you attempt to organize any expeditions into pack territory without official authorization, you'll be arrested for trespassing and reckless endangerment. Am I clear? Brad's face had gone from purple to white. He looked at Elena, with such pure hatred that she instinctively stepped back. This isn't over, he said, his voice low and venomous. You think you've won? You think a few pretty words and sob stories change what they are? This town will regret this. And when those monsters show their true nature, when they slaughter someone's child or burn someone's home, everyone will remember that you made us vulnerable. That you betrayed your own species for animals in human skin." He stormed out, his supporters trailing after him. Maybe 10 people total out of a crowd of hundreds. The rest stayed, and asked questions. About the pack, about shifter culture, about what coexistence might actually look like. Pearl and Patrick answered some. Elena answered others. And slowly, impossibly, a bridge began to form, fragile and uncertain, but real. Through the bond, Elena felt Daryl's overwhelming relief, pride, and love flooding toward her. "You did it," his voice whispered in her mind. "My brilliant, brave mate. You actually did it." "We did it," Elena corrected. "All of us. Together." The meeting ended near midnight. People filed out slowly, still talking, still processing. Elena slumped against the stage, exhaustion crashing over her now that the adrenaline had faded. Kara and Andy materialized beside her. "Time to go," Kara said quietly. "Before anyone gets second thoughts or Brad comes back with friends." They slipped out the back door into the cool night air. The forest beckoned, dark and welcoming, and Elena felt Daryl's presence getting closer. He was coming to meet them. Unable to stay away any longer. She'd done it. Against all odds. Against fear and hate, and Brad's best efforts, she'd spoken truth and been heard. The cost of peace was vulnerability, risk, standing exposed before people who might destroy you. But sometimes, just sometimes, that vulnerability was met with understanding instead of violence. And that made all the risk worthwhile. Chapter 10. The Bond That Binds Two Worlds. 2 months had passed since the town meeting that changed everything. Elena stood at the newly established border marker, a carved wooden post that represented something unprecedented, official recognition of pack territory by human government. On one side, Millbrook. On the other, the northern pack's land, legally protected, finally safe. The negotiations had been brutal. Hours of meetings, compromises, legal wrangling with state officials who could barely believe shifters existed, let alone deserved rights. But Christopher's documentation proved irrefutable. The pack had history here, centuries of it, predating human settlement by generations. And Elena's testimony, along with Pearl's and Patrick's and dozens of others who'd quietly benefited from pack mercy over the years, had tipped the scales. "Still can't believe it's real," Lena said, appearing beside Elena with her healer's bag. She was heading into town officially now, with proper identification that listed her as a shifter citizen, under the new legislation. "Yesterday I treated Mayor Whitmore's grandson for pneumonia. He actually thanked me. Called me Dr. Walker. And everything." "How did it feel?" Elena asked, smiling. "Terrifying. Amazing. Like maybe the world is actually changing." Lena squeezed Elena's hand. "Because of you. Because you refused to accept that hate was inevitable." "I just spoke truth," Elena said quietly. "The town chose what to do with it. Not everyone had chosen well. Brad Ritter and his remaining supporters had left Millbrook entirely, relocating to a town 3 counties over where their hatred could still find purchase. Good riddance, most people said. Though Elena knew Brad hadn't given up, just regrouped. Somewhere out there, he was still planning, still recruiting, still convinced that shifters were abominations that needed eliminating. But that was a problem for another day. Today was about something else entirely. "Are you ready?" Daryl's voice came from behind her, warm and low, and sending shivers down her spine even after 2 months together. Elena turned to find him in formal ceremonial leathers, his dark hair tied back, golden eyes glowing with barely contained emotion. Behind him stood the entire pack, hundreds of wolves in human form, dressed in their finest, gathered for the ceremony that would make official what everyone already knew. "I'm terrified," Elena admitted. "What if I mess up the vows? What if the pack mind rejects me? What if—" Daryl silenced her with a kiss, deep and reassuring, the bond between them singing with love and certainty. "The pack already accepts you," he murmured against her lips. "This ceremony just makes it formal. You've been my mate in everything but name for weeks now. This is just speaking the words out loud. Then let's make it official," Elena said, taking his offered hand. They walked together into the valley, Elena's home now, no longer a guest but a true member of the community. The pack had built a dais in the central clearing, decorated with autumn flowers and carved with symbols representing the bond between human and wolf. Pamela waited at the center, ancient and powerful in her ceremonial robes, her eyes sharp with satisfaction. "We gather under the full moon," she began, her voice carrying across the valley, "to witness the joining of souls, to formalize the bond between alpha and mate, between human and pack, between two worlds that chose understanding over fear." The ritual was beautiful and strange and deeply moving. Elena spoke vows and languages she'd only learned weeks ago, pack tongue mixed with English, promises of loyalty and love and standing together through whatever came. Daryl's vows echoed hers, his voice rough with emotion as he pledged his protection, his heart, his future. Then came the blood ritual, palms cut and pressed together, magic flaring bright enough to see even in daylight. The bond that had been growing between them suddenly solidified, became permanent and unbreakable. Elena gasped. As the pack mind opened fully to her, hundreds of consciousnesses brushing against hers, welcoming her, accepting her as one of their own. "Welcome home," they whispered in her mind. "Welcome, bridge builder. Welcome, Alpha's mate. Welcome, sister." Tears streamed down Elena's face. She'd spent 19 years alone, invisible, unwanted, and now she belonged to something so vast and loving and powerful that it stole her breath. "The bond is sealed," Pamela announced. "Let all who witness know. Elena Mullins is pack. Elena Brooks is mate. And anyone who threatens her, threatens us all." The pack howled a sound of pure joy and acceptance that echoed across the valley and into the forest beyond. Even in Millbrook, people would hear it and know. The bridge between worlds was not just built, but fortified with love. The celebration lasted through the night. Food and music and laughter filled the valley as pack members congratulated them, shared stories, welcomed Elena officially into the family she'd chosen. Pearl and Patrick came with Juana, who immediately ran off to play with the pack children, no longer afraid, just delighted. "She wants to be a healer like Lena," Pearl said, watching her daughter with soft eyes. "Wants to learn about herbs and pack magic. Is that allowed?" "She's welcome to learn whatever she wants," Daryl said warmly. "Your daughter saved my mate's life by being brave enough to take that first dose of medicine. We owe her a debt. Teaching her healing arts would be an honor." Patrick shifted uncomfortably, still adjusting to casual conversation with the alpha he'd once shot, but he extended his hand anyway. "Thank you. For everything. For healing Juana. For showing mercy I didn't deserve. For giving this town a chance to be better." Daryl shook his hand firmly. "Thank Elena. She's the one who believed in the possibility of peace when I was ready to flee or fight. She built this bridge. We all just walked across it." As the night deepened and the celebration continued, Elena found herself on a quiet overlook with Daryl, looking down at the valley, their valley now, protected and peaceful. "Do you regret it?" Daryl asked softly. "Giving up your human life? You can't go back now. The mate bond ties you to the pack, to the land, to me. You'll age slower, live longer, exist between two worlds forever. That's not a small sacrifice." "I'm not sacrificing anything," Elena said firmly. "I'm gaining everything I never had. Family, purpose, love, a home where I'm not just tolerated but wanted. How could I possibly regret that?" She turned to face him, cupping his jaw gently. "You saved me too, you know. Not from death, from loneliness. From a life of existing without truly living. We rescued each other, Daryl. That's what mates do." He kissed her then, under the full moon, with the pack celebrating below and the future stretching ahead, full of challenges but also hope. The bond between them pulsed with perfect synchronization, two hearts, two souls, two worlds unified. Not because they were the same, but because they'd chosen each other despite the differences. 3 years later, Elena stood in the same valley, watching her daughter, barely 6 months old, already showing signs of the gift play in the grass under Lena's watchful eye. Half human, half shifter, fully loved by both communities that had learned to coexist. The treaty had spread. Other packs, seeing the Northern Pack's success, had reached out to their neighboring towns. The legislation had expanded to 3 more states. Change was slow, painful, imperfect, but it was happening. Brad Ritter had tried twice more to organize attacks. Both times, he'd been stopped by legal injunctions and lack of support. The world was changing too fast for his hatred to keep up. Patrick now served on the Joint Council, representing Millbrook's interests while advocating for the pack. Pearl taught human children and wolf pups together in a school that existed on the border between worlds. Christopher's histories were being published, documenting shifter culture for future generations. And Elena was exactly where she belonged. Bridge builder, healer, mother, mate. No longer the girl with mismatched eyes who didn't fit anywhere. Now she was the woman who fit everywhere, because she'd had the courage to see worth in the worthless. To offer mercy when hate was easier. To build bridges when walls would have been safer. Thinking deep thoughts? Daryl asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. Just remembering, Elena said softly. Remembering the girl who found a dying wolf in the forest and changed everything. The girl who saved a king, Daryl murmured. Who became a queen. Who proved that kindness isn't weakness, it's the strongest force in the world. Elena leaned back into his embrace, feeling the bond hum between them. Feeling the pack mind brush against her consciousness, feeling their daughter's bright little presence through the magic they all shared. She'd been told her whole life that kindness was its own reward, but she'd learned the truth was more complex, more beautiful. Kindness was its own reward, yes, but it was also the foundation for love, for family, for entire worlds transformed, and that made every risk, every sacrifice, every moment of vulnerability worthwhile. Because some bridges, once built, change everything, forever. Dear viewers, as we reach the end of Elena and Daryl's story, I want to leave you with something to think about. How many times have we walked past our own dying wolf? Someone different. Someone struggling. Someone the world has decided isn't worth saving because we were too afraid to see their humanity. Elena's journey reminds us that the bridges we're most afraid to build are often the ones that transform everything. That mercy shown to those society calls monsters might be the bravest act of all. So here's my question for you. If you found yourself at the edge of that forbidden forest, facing something wounded and dangerous and desperately in need of compassion, would you have the courage to kneel down and offer help? Or would fear win? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I genuinely want to know what you would do in Elena's position, and whether you believe people, or wolves, can truly change when shown unexpected kindness. And if this story moved you, if it made you think differently about the bridges we build or the mercy we offer, please consider hitting that like button. It helps others find these stories, and maybe, just maybe, reminds us all that compassion is never wasted, even when the world calls it foolish. Until next time, stay kind, stay brave, and remember, some debts are worth being paid in magic.